human beings, as Indians, as women, we have no option but to hope. We must hope. And that hope is based on real indices. And we shall fight and we shall win, not just us in India, but all over the world, against gender discrimination, against genocide, and against discrimination against queer people, for justice, not just for basic rights, but for justice.
Karuna Nundi, sadly, we're out of time. I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC. Thanks for joining us. 3 minutes to 6, Tuesday morning, August 20th. And you're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning. So today, what's the weather going to be like? It's how I start every show. Just want to let you know what's coming. Hot. Really hot. Humidex of 35 hot. A high of 30 in Winnipeg today. Mix of sun and cloud and a little bit hazy. This afternoon, winds are going to be south 20, gusting to 40. Also in Brandon this morning and today, you're expecting gusty winds and a high of 30 as well. And up in Thompson, a 30% chance of showers and a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm with local smoke. A high of 28 degrees in Thompson. So thanks for joining us this morning on the show. We're on air till 8:37. If you need us on the commute, it's 788-3093. Your current temperature in Winnipeg is 19 degrees. Let's say good morning to the team. We have Chloe Friesen in. Good morning, Chloe. Chloe is directing the show and we'll be covering the commute and our weather forecasts on air. Sierra Sanders is here. Good morning, Sierra. Sierra's behind the controls of the program this morning. And Megan Ketchison is also with us. She's here now with our headlines from our newsroom.
Well, good morning. Business owners in the Pacific Industrial Area near Notre Dame and McPhillips are exasperated by a recent spike in property crime. The owner of a line sewer and water on Myrtle Street says thieves have targeted his businesses 4 times in the last 2 months. He says the first time they stole most of their computers, another time they stole his grandmother's motorized wheelchair. And a Manitoba broadcaster's past comments have reignited outrage after his appointment to the Senate. Charles Adler was investigated in 1999 for comments he made on air about First Nations leaders. The Canadian Broadcast Standards Council found the statements were fair political comment, but Grand Chief Kathy Merrick of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs says the remarks are offensive and she wants his appointment rescinded.
Thank you, Megan. We're going to have next news with Megan coming up at the half hours. And of course, news anytime online at cbc.ca/Manitoba. In the program today, Winnipeg's getting a new police chief next month. We're going to talk to a longtime MMIWG advocate, Sheila North, about what she wants to see from the next police chief, what qualities she's looking for, and also what needs to happen to rebuild the relationship between police and community. This is part of actually a series of community conversations that we've been having on this question. So stay tuned. That's coming up just before 8.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
It's been a year of change for the band The Beaches. They got dropped by their label, they fired their manager, and just about all of them went through a breakup.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. It was a passing of the torch on the first day of the Democratic National Convention. U.S. President Joe Biden gave an emotional address to his party as it welcomes its new presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. The CBC's Ithel Musa is covering the convention in Chicago. Ithel, take us through day one.
Well, yesterday was really about Joe Biden. His speech last night was a goodbye and I love you to Americans. Biden reflected on his career and, in his view, the accomplishments of his administration. He also contrasted his political record with Donald Trump's, saying he felt inspired to run for office after watching the developments in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017, when hundreds of white supremacists rallied in that city and violent clashes broke out. Here's more from his speech.
Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally. They didn't even bother to wear their hoods. Hate was on the march in America.
Biden also gave a ringing endorsement of Kamala Harris, saying she will be a president America can be proud of. There was a major protest yesterday calling for an end to U.S. military support of Israel. And while Biden did not address that specifically, he did vow to continue working to help bring the hostages home, to end the war in Gaza, and deliver a ceasefire.
What are we expecting today?
Well, delegates will participate in a ceremonial roll call today. Harris became the party's official nominee earlier this month after receiving a majority of votes during a virtual roll call. Today's vote is meant to be a celebration of her nomination. The theme of the convention today is a bold vision for America's future, but it will be a former president that will be front and center. America's first Black president, Barack Obama, will deliver a speech tonight in his political hometown.
All right, thank you, Ethel.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Ethel Musa in Chicago. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is now in Cairo. Ceasefire talks continue there this week. Right now, Blinken is pushing for a bridging deal, something Israel and Hamas can agree to that will put them on the path to peace. Sasha Petrusik is in Jerusalem following developments. And Sasha, where do negotiations stand right now?
Well, after meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, Blinken said this is a decisive moment, maybe the last opportunity to get a ceasefire deal that would also see the hostages released. So the timing is critical. Netanyahu has said that he supports the American proposal. So the pressure is really on the militant group Hamas, which was not at the table during the talks in Doha last week and says it won't be at talks in Cairo this week. They are involved, though, through Egyptian and Qatari mediators. Hamas spokesman in Lebanon did say that he doesn't really understand why the Americans are pushing this. He thinks that they are trying to cater to Israeli demands while ignoring Hamas's demands. He says that they don't need more negotiations. What they need is just to implement the plan that was proposed by President Biden back in May. That one would have called for a 6-week initial ceasefire with negotiations that could extend that, and also a withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza gradually.
The Israel Defense Forces says it has retrieved the bodies of more hostages. What can you tell us about that?
These are 6 hostages, all of them men. All of them are from 2 kibbutzes in the area right around the border with Gaza. Their bodies were found in a tunnel in the Khan Yunis area in southern Gaza. They'd probably been dead for a few months, several of them. The others seem to have been abandoned during Israeli airstrikes when their captors fled. There's about 100 hostages now that remain. The military says a third or more are believed to be dead.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Specialist divers are back in the water off the coast of Sicily. They're searching for the site of a sunken super yacht.
Le difficoltà del caso sono dettate dalla profondità che non consente tempi di lavoro.
The inspector of the diving unit says the wreck is so deep underwater it is slowing down the search. The yacht is now 50 meters below the surface. Divers can't stay underwater for very long. There's also a pile of debris and furniture blocking access to the below-deck cabins. The super yacht sunk when it was hit by a severe storm yesterday. The bodies of 6 people are still believed to be on board, including British tech tycoon Mike Lynch. Ukraine's parliament is creating a legal path to ban the Russian-linked minority Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It passed new legislation this morning. The bill bans the Russian Orthodox Church from Ukrainian territory. And if the courts approve, it will also ban any other affiliated religious organizations. Ukraine's government says the minority church is a hotbed of Russian influence and is complicit in the Kremlin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The labor dispute on Canada's railways is already starting to affect international trade and is causing concern for industries who rely on it. The union representing workers for both CN Rail and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Limited says they will walk off the job Thursday. And CN says it would lock workers out at the same time. That is unless the union and the companies come to an agreement. But as Evan Dyer tells us, they're still far apart.
harvest is already underway in the province. The timing is very concerning.
Shannon Sarita is with Alberta Grains.
This is certainly unprecedented to see two of our major or only railways potentially be locked out.
Already, Canadian Pacific Kansas City, or CPKC, has stopped accepting hazardous cargo. U.S. rail carriers have also begun to turn away cargo bound for Canada, as has Maersk, one of the world's biggest shipping companies.
We know how critical it is. Unfortunately, the union has not been negotiating seriously with us.
CPKC's Jonathan Abacassis says the company knows this will hurt.
We need to have more stability and predictability in order to be able to operate our network, so we have no choice but to move forward with a lockdown.
We are trying to find common ground.
Christopher Monette of the Teamsters, the union representing the workers, says the rail companies are the ones causing the impasse.
The main sticking points are almost all company proposals and not union proposals.
One issue revolves around fatigue and safety. The union says the railroads are looking to relax standards, a charge they deny. CN also wants the right to order employees to relocate around the country for periods of up to 90 days.
This obviously takes the views of workers as pieces of machinery that they can just pick up and move across Canada, ignoring the fact that rail workers, well, like everyone else, they have kids. They have families.
Barring a last-minute breakthrough, trains will stop running on Thursday just after midnight. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Yukon's government says work can finally begin to protect the land and water. The Victoria Gold Mine is under receivership. Its facility failed 2 months ago during a massive rock slide. Gold is chemically extracted from rock using a cyanide solution. An estimated 300 million litres of the solution spilled into the environment. As Julian Green tells us, how the cyanide plume may be moving is a concern for some residents.
Sylvia Frisch uses a scythe to cut tall grass for her ponies.
If the water is poisoned, the land is poisoned, the people are poisoned.
Her house is first downstream from the mine, and Frisch says her lifestyle and her birch syrup business are under threat. And she says it may be too late to prevent environmental devastation.
I think my confidence in hard rock mining is over. If it ever really existed, it's over now.
The territorial government has tasked consulting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers with accomplishing what Victoria Gold botched. That includes installing a barrier to stabilize the site, building more wastewater storage, and a series of wells to intercept contaminated groundwater. John Stryker, the Minister of Mines, says work on those is underway right now.
So how will we rebuild trust? By making sure we do everything we can right now to protect the environment in Dublin Gulch before it becomes an environmental catastrophe.
The heap leach facility is located at the top of Dublin Gulch Valley. Below, about a kilometre away, is Haggart Creek, where in recent weeks elevated levels of cyanide have been detected and nearly 100 fish have been found dead. Engineers have warned that every day a cyanide plume inches closer to the waterway, which empties into a network of rivers that eventually connect to the territory's largest, the Yukon River. The cause of the failure still remains unknown, and the territory has committed to launching an investigation into that. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. 6:10 a.m. is the time right now on your Tuesday morning, 19 degrees and clear in downtown Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us this morning. There is rain in some parts of the province. We'll walk you through that in a moment. This hour on the program, we are going to be talking more about the prospect of a rail labor dispute at the rail line. So you've just been hearing about that on World Report. Over 9,000 rail workers could strike or be locked out later this week. So we're going to talk in more detail about the factors that are contributing to this. We're also going to explore the potential fallout for Canada's economy and supply chains, especially across the prairies here and into Manitoba. So that's coming up this hour. In addition, this hour on the show, the Winnipeg Humane Society says a handful of the 130 dogs that were seized just outside of the city earlier this month are now ready for their new forever homes. We're going to hear more about how the pups are doing. Stay with us. Right now to other developing stories with Megan Ketchison.
Well, the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is calling the appointment of longtime broadcaster Charles Adler to the Senate a step backwards for reconciliation. 25 years ago, the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council investigated comments Adler made about First Nations leaders that were called insulting. At the time, the council found the comments were fair political comment, but Grand Chief Kathy Merrick wants the Governor General to rescind his appointment. A healthcare union in Manitoba is facing some blowback. The Canadian Union of Public Employees is recommending a new tentative agreement for its support workers like healthcare aides and home care attendants. But while CUPE likes the deal, another union, MGEU, does not. We'll have why at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into what's going on in our forecast. Chloe Friesen is in once again this morning. Hi, Chloe.
Hello, good morning. Right now here in Winnipeg at the Forks, it is already 19 degrees, looking to be a pretty balmy day out there. In Winnipeg, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud today, hazy skies, wind becoming south 20, gusting to 40 early this afternoon. Forecasted high is 30 degrees, with the humidex feeling more like 35, so it is set to be a toasty day out there. In Brandon, mostly cloudy at the moment, 17 degrees in Brandon. You're looking at a high of 30 with the humidex feeling more like 38. In Dauphin, we are currently sitting at 21 degrees, cloudy skies, looking at a high of 30, similar to Brandon with the humidex feeling like 38. And in Thompson right now at the airport, light rain shower in Thompson, 15 degrees. Could have a risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon with local smoke in the air. High of 28, feeling like 34 with the humidex there. When it comes to the commute, it's just about 6 a.m. on a summer Tuesday, so not too much going on. But if you do find something or that is slowing you down out there, I would love to hear from you. We'll share that info with your fellow commuters. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, if you've been following the news earlier this month, you might recall that dog lovers were shocked to learn over 130 dogs had to be seized from a home just north of Winnipeg. Now, many of the dogs needed medical care. They were taken by the Winnipeg Humane Society to be helped. And now some of the dogs are ready to move from shelter into their new homes, and adoptions will be on a first-come basis. Jessica Miller is the executive director of the Winnipeg Humane Society. She gave an update to CBC's Emily Brass.
It's been a few weeks now since those dogs were seized. How are they doing?
They're doing pretty good considering. The issue that we're having is there's just so many of them that we have them single, double, triple housed, and trying to get through them. Trying to get through so many in our clinic with the different medical needs they have, and then even getting to the spay and neuter has been difficult due to the quantity and the number of animals we already have in shelter. But they're doing really well considering the circumstances.
Yeah, that's like more than 10 dozen dogs.
Yeah.
That's a big pile of dogs.
Yeah, and we had a seizure right before that of the Maltese of 68. And in between, we had two smaller seizures that we didn't bring public, one of 40 animals and one of 60 animals. So we've just had massive quantities coming in, month after month for probably 6 months straight.
Wow, that is so many dogs. So this latest group of dogs that were seized from the home north of Winnipeg, what kind of dogs are they?
So they're all mixed small breed. Some of them that we provided pictures of look kind of like Chihuahua mixes, but when they came in, it was all sorts of small breed animals, some with long hair, some with short hair. And so as they slowly hit the adoption floor, we'll be able to fully reveal what all of them are as they go through the legal process.
So you'll have to take one by one pictures of all of these 130 dogs to put them up for adoption?
Yes, that's what it's sounding like, to be honest with you. But we have 3 hitting the adoption floor today. They just had their surgeries. And so 2 Chihuahua mixes looks like they are going to be available probably first thing tomorrow after they recover and come out of anesthesia.
Okay, so hopefully some people looking for dogs are hearing this now. What can you tell us about the dogs that are up for adoption? Like, what are their personalities like?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the typical shaky Chihuahua. So, these guys are scared. They're very under socialized. Being in one house with 130 litter mates, is a bit traumatic in that you are resource guarding, you're barrier guarding, you're not sure when your food is coming, and so they are scared and shaky, but they want companionship. They're coming up, trying to smell, trying to say hello. And then we've had other ones that I visited with that just want to jump right into my arms. And they're just like, I want to be with you. I want to have human companionship. And so I'm really excited to see them get that opportunity and have the scared ones learn what it's like to trust for the first time.
Oh, that one that jumped in your arms. That's so
I know.
sweet. So
It's so sweet.
adorable. So 3 of them are ready for adoption, I guess, by tomorrow. When will the other dogs be available to adopt?
Yeah, so the other thing that we did this time, because there was so many, is we have reached out to our partner rescue groups who, work throughout both the city of Winnipeg and have their own foster networks and their own adoption networks. And so we've outsourced some of the dogs to a bunch of different rescues to try to help us with getting through the spay and neuters quickly, getting them up for adoption and having a different adoption pools of people looking at them instead of having them sit so long in the Winnipeg Humane Society. So all of those animals have been being transferred out, over the last 3 or 4 days and are going to different rescues. So, Manitoba Underdogs, Canine Advocates, etc. So if there are any people out there who are supporting those rescues and are familiar, you will see some of these dogs with them. They're helping execute some of the medical care and just streamline because animals who sit in shelter for a really long time just don't do well, both mentally and physically. So we're trying to get through the process as quick as possible.
So given, the background experience these dogs have had, who would be the ideal owner for them?
Yeah, I think someone who is very patient and who is willing to take the time to let the animal come to them. There's a lot of behavior tricks that we have when you're approaching a dog. You show them your hand first. You don't look them directly in the eye. You let them come to you. You sit on the floor and let them explore and smell you when they think you're not looking. And so someone who's patient like that and has the time to foster a relationship, because they'll have to remember these animals have never had a relationship with any human. They've only been in a house together in massive quantities. And so I also think because they're small breeds, it's great for people who, maybe are elderly and can't be pulled by a massive dog. So someone who's at home who wants a lap dog, I think these animals would be perfect for. And someone who has time for them because they're going to need time to come out of their shell. And, the socialization period is so important. So I think that would probably be the best, next best home for these animals.
Are there any kind of special considerations their future owners might have to keep in mind when it comes to their health and well-being?
Yeah, so whenever we do have a health issue with an animal, we make that known through the adoption process. And so as these animals get medically cleared, we will know if there's, for example, a seizure condition or an eye condition. We do see a lot of eye conditions in smaller breed animals. And so we will make that known during the adoption so people know if medication is something they can afford, is the special needs something that they have time for. And so, some of them likely will come out like that. And it's just like any other shelter animal, we do the same thing. So people will know upon the meet and greet if that animal has special needs and can fit in with their family.
So where can people go to learn more about adopting them? They sound like they're pretty cute. They just need a little extra time and attention. But, where can people go to find out more?
Yeah, we're trying to upload them on our website as soon as they become available. Sometimes in these seizure cases, these animals are very popular. And of course, small breeds are popular anyways for so many of the reasons we talked about, being in an apartment, being elderly and needing to not be pulled around or having, very long walks, etc. So you can pop up onto our website, which is winnipeghumanesociety.ca. You can look at our social media. We're trying to keep everyone updated as much as we can. And if I'm being completely honest, if you really want one, the best way is to just walk into the door, because what's happening is as they go through medical and then spay and neuter, they get put right into adoption. And so if you're there that moment, that day, you'll have the opportunity to do the meet and greet or be put as the first interested party. So if you are really interested, I would suggest coming down. And we are open at 11 every day, close at 7. And so you can also call our adoptions department to see if there's any available as they come out of surgery.
Jessica Miller, the executive director of the Winnipeg Humane Society, in conversation with CBC's Emily Brass yesterday on Up to Speed. It is now 6:22 a.m. You're with Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcuse with our team here at the show. 19 in Winnipeg, 17 in Brandon, raining up in Thompson and 15 degrees. Well, one of the top things that people are watching across this country is what's going to be happening with the railway companies. Canada's two main companies are on the brink of a major labor dispute. So Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City remain in a standoff right now with the Teamsters Union. Now, if a deal's not reached by Thursday, the parties warn that over 9,000 workers could go on strike or face a lockout, as you've been hearing in the news. Now, that has potential to bring much of this country's freight to a standstill and significantly disrupt supply chains. Of course, across the prairies, we're always worried about agriculture. To tell us more about what's at stake, Fraser Johnson is with us, expert in supply chain management at Western University's Ivey Business School. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being with us. So for those that have not been following the details of this, what are the issues at the heart of the conflict here?
Well, with any labor negotiation, obviously pay is a significant part. There are a number of related issues, though, worker scheduling and issues related to health and safety, such as fatigue, which gets back to the scheduling issue.
And how have the companies been gearing up for a possible strike or lockout?
Well, it looks like we're heading closer towards a lockout than a strike. The companies have been winding down their operations over the last week or 10 days. They took so-called hazardous materials out of their system last week, so these would be chemicals and fertilizers. Removed food-related products from the rail car systems this week. So these are refrigerated products. So they're trying to prepare for a situation on Thursday if there isn't a agreement reached.
I'll ask you more in a moment, Fraser, about sort of, the labor minister and what was said and what's going on with the negotiations. But I want to get into what's going to be potentially disrupted across the prairies. So obviously, I think the stat, and tell me if I'm wrong, is 80 to 85% of agriculture products get moved by rail. And there's not a lot of other alternatives. So what are the biggest concerns here?
Yeah, it's a significant local story in Winnipeg because, the rail companies touch most everything that consumers use, fuel, food, autos, commodities, consumer goods. But, for the agricultural sector in Western Canada right now, it's a significant story because the farmers are starting to take their crops off the field. And the supply chain in the agriculture sector is designed to move it towards export as opposed to storage. So there aren't a lot of options for the farmers, for the grain handlers, for example, in terms of storing the materials if the rail system shut down.
Given that there's not a lot of options, what would happen?
Well, I really think that there is no plan B, so you can't substitute trucks, for example, because there isn't enough capacity and it's not efficient from a cost standpoint anyhow. So I think if there is a lockout, for example, that in a matter of days, not weeks, that the federal government would have to consider back to work legislation.
Why did the labor minister turn down CN's request for binding arbitration?
Well, I really can't argue with the decision last week to do that because, I think a negotiated settlement is probably the best settlement. But I also think that the federal government's got to be flexible with the issue and, take into consideration the overall impact on the Canadian economy. So just to put things in perspective, the rail companies collectively handle about $1 billion of freight every day, so about $380 billion a year. And the Canadian economy has a GDP of about $2.1 trillion, so we just can't ignore this issue.
In your view, how likely is it that a last-minute deal will be reached? What's your sense of that?
I was more optimistic last week, frankly, Marcy. The rhetoric coming from both sides more recently, as of yesterday, for example, is not very positive, where CN stated that they hadn't made any meaningful progress. So unless the situation changes, I think we're headed towards a lockout on Thursday at midnight.
Have we seen anything of this scale before regarding our railways in this country?
Not with the railways. We had the port strike last year. We've kind of had a successive series of labor disruptions in our transportation sector over the last decade or 12 years. But this is the first time in history that we've got both rail companies with their contracts expiring at the same time. Usually they're staggered.
This might be, I apologize for my ignorance because I don't know how to phrase this question, but we were talking about, you said there's no good options. You think that this could actually lead to back to work legislation if we go down that road and get into this position. But what I'm wondering then is what happens to all of that grain and the food if you can't move it by truck and there's no viable option? Does it get distributed locally or does it just become waste?
No, I think I think there is within a small margin of error, days but not weeks of storage capacity in the system, and that's why I think the government will have to act quickly because they can't let the crops, the product will just get backed up, and I don't think the government will have much choice but to get the system back running again.
And the optics of this, how have both sides been presenting their case, so to speak, to the public?
Well, I think both sides are, I think the rail companies are trying to make sure that they're being responsible to their customers, and from a health and safety perspective, making sure that they manage the wind down properly in case there is a work stoppage. And obviously, the Teamsters, who represent the 9,300 rail workers, want to make sure that they communicate to their membership that they're getting the best deal from the company. And my experience has been, I'm sure with most other people, that usually these things go down to the 11th hour anyhow.
Well, the 11th hour is August 22nd. I guess we're just a couple of days away, right? Thursday. Thank you very much for being with us and walking us through your thoughts on this, Fraser. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Marcy.
That's Fraser Johnson, professor of operational management with specialization in supply chain management at Western University's Ivey Business School. If you want to read more analysis about the supply chains across this country, how they may be disrupted, should there be action taken here moving forward, you can go on our national site at cbc.ca. And if you are a producer or a farmer in this province and you're watching and worried and making your own provisional plans, we'd love to hear from you. 788-3205 is our listener line. You can also email the show directly anytime at radio893@cbc.ca. I know you're up early getting crops off already, so I always say people who run bakeries and farm, we always hear from in the first hours of the show, which is right now. We're coming up to your 6:30 news. We have business news ahead. We'll get the opening day's market, so stay tuned for that. Really muggy day ahead in Winnipeg. If you have any problems on the commute this morning, whether you are on the highway or in the city of Winnipeg, if you're biking or driving, the number is the same. Give us a call and update us if we'll pass it along to other people. 788-3093. is the commuter line here at CBC. It's 204-788-3093. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 6:30. Mainly clear and 19 downtown. Hot and humid today with a gusty south wind and a high of 30. Flooding has forced hundreds of tenants to evacuate a downtown Winnipeg apartment high-rise. Fire crews were called to 170 Hargrave Street shortly before noon yesterday. They found a significant flood inside the 25-story building. Richard Marcoux says he was in his suite on the 15th floor when the alarm went off.
They said everyone needs to evacuate the building. So about 11:30, I left the building, and I haven't been able to get back in except to pick up some meds.
Fire crews have been working with police to evacuate and secure the building, which includes shutting off the power. A city spokesperson says about 300 tenants have registered with its emergency social services team. 170 Hargrave is one of 2 high-rises in the Holiday Towers complex. The company that manages the complex did not respond to CBC's request for comment last night. One of Manitoba's most prominent First Nations leaders calls the appointment of this province's newest senator insulting. Kathy Merrick is the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. She's urging the Governor-General to rescind Charles Adler's appointment to the Senate. Adler has been working in broadcasting for decades. Merrick says comments Adler made on the air 25 years ago, including calling First Nations leaders uncivilized boneheads, are offensive.
It's a great insult to First Nation people and a blatant disregard for the principle of respect, of equality, and reconciliation that Canada claims to uphold.
Adler declined comment on the matter. A Canadian Broadcast Standards Council investigation determined Adler's statements to be fair political comment. Business owners in the Pacific Industrial Area near Notre Dame and McPhillips are exasperated by a recent spike in property crime. Jesse McDowell owns a line, sewer, and water on Myrtle Street. Thieves have targeted his business 4 times in the last 2 months. McDowell says the first time they stole most of his computers.
I think they had a key that they found in here. They come back and kind of finished the job off, cleaned everything out from printers, computers, my dad's art studio, grandmother's electric wheelchair, popcorn maker in the lounge, alcohol, everything was completely cleaned out.
McDowell once found a person passed out in his offices. He says damage totals more than $100,000. McDowell says thieves even broke through concrete cinder blocks to try and get in. He's written his counselor to ask the city to do more to address crime. Leaders with CUPE are recommending a new deal for its healthcare support workers in Manitoba. Voting starts today on a new tentative agreement for those workers, which includes healthcare aides and home care attendants. But a petition opposing the contract has been signed by hundreds of people. They say the new deal doesn't do enough to increase some of the lowest wages in healthcare. Shannon McAteer is the healthcare coordinator with CUPE Manitoba. She says CUPE's leadership is still endorsing the deal, but the final decision is not up to them.
We're recommending it because, one, we do believe it's a fair deal, right? Like, it's a fair deal. Nothing is ever perfect, but we want the members to make that decision.
McAteer says the deal is the best financial package they've secured in a negotiation in many years. You can read more on this story on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. In national news, the latest Canadian data on inflation from July is expected this morning. Inflation has been slowing down, and if the trend continues into September, economists expect interest rates will drop too. Anis Hidari reports.
High inflation has been increasing the price of, everything for quite a while in Canada, and those prices had been going up faster than ever until high interest rates finally started to slow down the economy. That also meant inflation has been slowing. If that continues, interest rates could drop too.
It is reasonable.
Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said as much just under a month ago.
But the timing is going to depend on incoming data.
The Bank of Canada has already cut interest rates twice this year. It wants inflation to stay between 1% and 3%. The last number dropped to 2.7% for June. If that trend continues, the bank can lighten up on interest rates. The central bank's next decision on those rates is in the first week of September. Anis Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
And the Democratic Party convention kicked off in Chicago last night. Kamala Harris is the party's candidate to run for president of the United States, and she made a surprise appearance on stage during the night.
People from every corner of our country and every walk of life are here, united by our shared vision for the future of our country. And this November, we will come together and declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward.
U.S. President Joe Biden was the keynote speaker last night. He criticized Trump. The Democratic Party convention runs until Thursday night when Kamala Harris delivers her main speech. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I tried to get through Biden's speech. I stayed up, Megan. I was tired. I was like, come on. They were an hour and a half behind, so I got through part of it and not the whole thing. Did see Hillary Clinton speak last night. It was deafening, the cheers that she received from the crowd. And no Beyonce sighting. Not yet.
Not yet.
Maybe Thursday.
Maybe.
I think that might happen. We'll see. All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on in the weather forecast here in Manitoba. 6:36 a.m. Chloe Friesen's in with our regional look.
Good morning. Right now here in Winnipeg, mainly clear skies at the Forks, 18 degrees. Looking pretty clear out the window here in Portage and Spence. Today we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud, hazy skies, wind becoming south 20, gusting to 40 early this afternoon. Our forecasted high is 30 degrees with a humidex. It's going to feel more like 35, so get ready for a bit of a sticky day out there. In Brandon, mostly cloudy skies at the moment, 17 degrees. Today, for folks in Brandon, you're looking at cloudy skies becoming a mix of sun and cloud this morning. Hazy as well in Brandon, wind becoming south 30, gusting to 50 this morning. A high of 30, but feeling more like 38 with that humidex. So you're going to have a hot wind kind of blowing around the city of Brandon today. Dauphin, cloudy at the moment, 21 degrees. Mainly cloudy skies, 30% chance of showers this morning and late this afternoon with the risk of a thunderstorm for folks in Dauphin. Wind becoming south 20. Gusting to 40 this morning, high of 30 with that humidex feeling like 38. And lastly, here in Thompson, you're looking at light rain at the moment, 15 degrees. Later today, mainly cloudy, 30% chance of showers this morning. And early this afternoon with the risk of a thunderstorm as well. We're already seeing some of those showers right now. Local smoke in the air, high of 28, feeling like 34 with that humidex. On the commute, not a lot of issues going on, but I will remind folks about a street closure. Edmonton Street between Graham and Portage is closed from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. today. So that's just lasting today until 8 p.m. So plan ahead, avoid that area if it is part of your commute. Again, that's Edmonton Street between Graham and Portage, closed until 8 p.m. today. Of course, if there's anything else you would like to know about when it comes to the commute, you can call our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Chloe. It is 22 minutes now to 7 o'clock. Crystalie Ramlakan joins us via Zoom with our business report today. Hi, Crystalie.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So a dominating convenience store chain could land in Canadian hands. What are the details of this?
Yes, so the owner of Circle K is making a play for global convenience store giant 7-Eleven. So it has offered to buy one of the sector's biggest players, laying the groundwork to potentially unite them in a mammoth global retail business. 7&I Holdings, which is headquartered in Japan and owns 7-Eleven, says it has received a non-binding offer from Quebec-based Alimentation Couche-Tard. And though no details yet on how much was offered. Now, Couche-Tard already covers 31 countries and has almost 17,000 stores across its banners. And 7&I operates about 86,000 stores, along with supermarkets, food producers, household goods retailers, financial services companies, and even a stake in Tower Records Japan. Pierre Larouche specializes in competition law at the University of Montreal for more on this story.
Clearly, these are all small local retailers. So obviously, the more you have, the more profit you're going to make. But the question is there some advantage also that you can derive at the level of supply or at the level of management, that you have a management formula that you can replicate and perhaps improve the profitability of 7-Eleven? I think that's what Couche-Tard is looking at. So they're going to get bigger, they're going to make more profit.
Now, Couche-Tard says there is no certainty at this stage that any agreement or transaction will be reached, but 7&I has formed a special committee to review the proposal.
To another story, there's, I understand, a new study that breaks down who is creating jobs in this country. What does it say?
Yes, so the report shows sectors that earn the most capital gains created no jobs over 5 years. So this analysis comes from the Center for Future Work, a progressive policy think tank, and that's comes after heated debate over the Liberals' decision to increase the inclusion rate on capital gains, which are profits made on the sale of assets. So business groups have opposed the increase, arguing it would hurt innovation and business investment. But the report found that while venture capital companies, investment banks, and the real estate sector made more than half of all corporate capital gains between 2018 and 2022, those sectors actually shed nearly 5,000 jobs during that time period. Now, the report also found there's no historical correlation between capital gains taxes and business investment in machinery, equipment, and intellectual property. And, the Liberals have made 2/3 of capital gains taxable, up from 1/2. But individuals' capital gains of $250,000 or less, the inclusion rate stays the same at 50%. Now, the Liberals say the change makes the tax system more fair and will help the government pay for priorities that matter to young people, such as housing. But Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has blasted the changes as a job-killing tax increase.
And finally, as some couples, continue to look at the high costs of putting on a wedding, I understand some are also starting to charge their guests to attend the wedding.
Yes. So the New York Times recently featured a 23-year-old who is charging $450 for a ticket to his wedding next year in Houston. And he says he has already spent more than $100,000 for the wedding for 125 guests. And that includes deposits on the venue, the DJ, and the photographer. And he says, many of his guests have spent more money on, say, Beyonce tickets. Now, according to a study by the wedding planning website, The Knot, the average cost of a wedding ceremony and reception last year was $35,000 US, which is an increase of $5,000 from the year before. So for more on this, here's Tracy Manel-Eskew, who is the co-founder of the Wedding Planners Institute of Canada.
It just kind of gives me the ick factor. I think it's, again, something against etiquette, because the people you're supposed to be inviting to your wedding are people that you really want there. They're your most loved family and friends. They're like honored guests.
And, the cost of being a guest is also becoming more expensive. The average cost of attending a wedding is $580 US, and that is an increase of $120 compared with 2021.
It's interesting because there's cultural factors at play when it comes to money moving, during wedding times, because I'm Ukrainian, so I grew up with the whole presentation thing. So it's sort of implied people are going to present a card, but it's also understood if you present a card and it doesn't have money in it, that's fine. It's not a necessity. Very different than ticketing, though, for your wedding. Right?
Yeah. And obviously, I've been to many Manitoba weddings, presentation only on the invite. And usually you give the amount of money that you think it costs for you to attend the wedding. Has always been my thought. Yeah.
100%. All right. What's going on in the markets this morning?
In Europe, stocks are moving lower. Germany is down. The UK is down. France is up. In Asia, markets are mostly up. Japan is up, but right now Shanghai and Hong Kong are both down. Oil is up at 5 cents to $74.42 US per barrel. Gold is up at $21.70 to $2,563 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 1/10 cent to 73.5 cents US.
All right. Thanks, Crystal Lee. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystal Lee Ramlichan at our business desk at CBC. It is 6:44 a.m. on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app, on YouTube, everywhere. Traffic, fine. 788-3093 if you need. It is going to be hot and sticky today. A high of 30, humidex 35. Really good day for a lemonade. We have an update on a story next on the show that we brought you earlier this summer. And then we'll give you the update at the end after you hear from these cutie patooties. A lot of kids have lemonade stands in the summertime, maybe hoping to make a couple extra bucks. But here in Winnipeg, 3 kids, Wynn, Ellie, and Asha, 10-year-old best friends from the city, all came together for their lemonade stand. But this one's got a bit of a twist. The money they made at their lemonade stand wasn't going into their own wallets. They are donating it all to a cause much more important to them and personal. CBC's Chloe Friesen, who's of course with us this morning, but went out earlier this summer for this story, she met with these 3 girls and their moms during a poster-making session in June.
What should I put on the to-do list? We need to make the shirt.
Can you tell me what you're raising money for?
We're raising money for cancer care in Manitoba.
Why is that something that's important to you?
Our moms all have cancer.
Can I color this one?
Michelle Wetter. In October, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, had a mastectomy, and then realized I have 2 stage 3 breast cancers.
Cynthia Mitchell. I was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, which is cancer of the bile ducts, in October of 2021. At present, I am living and thriving.
Megan Desai. I was diagnosed the end of January with triple negative breast cancer stage 2. Yeah, and I'm currently in treatment.
I have felt so fortunate that we're able to chat about things, and also that our daughters can support each other and have someone else that's going through something similar.
What is it like having friends who know what you're going through?
It's a lot easier. Yeah. Like if one of us are having like a bad day, we can like talk to each other or just hang out or something. Because then you're letting it out instead of just bottling it up, and then if it's just bottled up, then it's just more sad.
Yeah, they're very good friends, and they're good for each other, like good supports.
Should I put cancer care or cancer research?
I think they've all three of them have been connected since kindergarten, and just more recently, I think that they've become much closer. Three, I mean, we're biased, but 3 really phenomenal girls.
Ooh, can you read? What have you written right there?
One small voice makes big changes.
It's one thing to have a friend who can support you through this. It's another thing to have a friend who's also experienced it. Like that, the level of support changes. The nature of the support changes when it's someone who really truly is living the experience that you're living.
So the fact that we can relate because we have kids the same age, and that makes it better.
They started in May last year, so they just doing small lemonade stands on street corners, and that evolved into the first annual lemonade stand at the school, and then it's just blossoming since then, which is really lovely to see.
They have the biggest hearts.
They do.
They really do.
And I think it's probably been helpful for them because as a little kid you probably feel helpless to do something, and this gives them that outlet and to feel good about it.
There we go. Better. That's better.
It feels good, and it feels like we're giving something, but we're actually getting something back. We're getting the feeling that it feels good.
We are going to make hats, yeah. We just don't have the hats or the lemon patches today. Yeah, they're coming tomorrow. Yeah, I think that's huge. I think that piece of children feeling helpless throughout this process it's true. It's a genuine feeling for them. And this is a way for them to feel empowered. I think that is I don't normally get emotional. I think for me, regardless of my outcome, seeing that my children are surrounded by community and by love and support, and I know that they will be okay. And so seeing the lemonade stand in action and all of these people coming and supporting them, it's just something that I will hold with me for however long that I have. But knowing that my kids are going to be okay because they have good friends and they have a strong community and they are loved and supported.
Could you pass me the lead?
So what do you all need to do to set up a good lemonade stand? What have you been preparing?
Lemonade.
You need lemonade. Do you have a goal?
Well, last time we raised I think roughly $2,001.
$2,000?
And one.
And one?
Yeah.
So do you think you're gonna raise more than $2,001?
We're hoping.
Yeah. How much do you want? How many cups for both of you? One, and then you want one? Okay. So 2. You get 2 cups. I could pour one.
We're already pouring, sorry. Next time. Also, if you know anyone who has cancer, you can write it on the board there. Yeah. Feel free to. If you know anyone who has cancer. Yeah.
How is the lemonade stand going so far?
Really good.
How much money do you think is in that jar?
Over $200.
What's the biggest donation you've gotten so far?
$100 from one person. No lemonade. They didn't want lemonade.
There's money falling out.
How much money?
Lemonade, $5.
How much?
Just one.
Okay.
It's one of the greater evenings, I think, in our lives. Just watching our girls take initiative and do what they can to make a difference for Manitobans, but also to see our community show up in a really big way to support our girls, to support the foundation, and to support Manitobans is truly touching.
It's been amazing. I mean, the turnout is awesome and a lot of people excited to help support. And watching the girls, they're so happy doing it, and it's very rewarding.
Just two, yeah. Okay. Can I pour the other one? No, it's not. Okay, thank you. Have a lovely day. Bye. Thank you.
What would you say to other kids who might want to run a lemonade stand?
Have fun and try to sell a lot of lemonade. Have hope and believe in yourself because you can always do it. It feels really good because it gives people hope.
Say thank you. Should I hold it?
So that's Win, Ellie, and Asha. And they did raise, by the way, more than $2,001 at their lemonade stand. That item brought to us by Chloe Friesen back in June. Now, the grand total donated to Cancer Care Manitoba that day was $3,652. But Chloe, as I mentioned, is in this morning and has a bit more of a, another update from later in the summer.
I do, yeah. I heard from Cynthia, one of the girls' moms, and the three girls, Win, Ellie, and Asha, they continued to hold lemonade stands throughout July and August. And the updated fundraiser grand total, get this, as of today, is over $15,000.
Wow.
Just from these three girls and their lemonade stands throughout the summer.
Love that.
Incredible.
Great summer story and important, of course, for cancer care as well. It is 8 minutes to 7 o'clock on CBC.
All over Turtle Island, host Rosanna Deerchild welcomes you to Unreserved.
Indigenous peoples are retelling history through an Indigenous lens.
Unreserved, celebrating 10 years, looking back at how far we've come, and looking forward to the journey ahead.
How do we keep the story going?
Unreserved with Rosanna Deerchild. Now at a new time, Sunday afternoon at 2:30 in Newfoundland, 3 Pacific, 4 Mountain, and on demand on CBC Listen.
Not a bad morning out there for your Tuesday. Mainly clear, 19 degrees. Going to be really hot today. A high of 30 with Humidex 35 in the city. Well, as you might have heard in the news this morning, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs wants the Governor General and Prime Minister to send their latest Senate appointment packing. In 1999, while working as a broadcaster, Manitoban Charles Adler made some comments about Indigenous communities on air. Those comments included references to Indigenous leaders as, and this is going to be offensive, quote, uncivilized boneheads, end quote. Now, at the time, the AMC complained to broadcast regulators. The Canadian Broadcast Standards Council dismissed the complaint as, quote, fair political commentary, end quote. It's now 25 years later. The AMC and Grand Chief Kathy Merrick are calling for Adler to be removed from the Senate.
We cannot allow time and time again for individuals to be making comments in regards to our people. And it's been done previously. I realized in 1992, there was a complaint that came forth from the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs in terms of the comments that were made. It's a great insult to First Nation people and a blatant disregard for the principle of respect, of equality, and reconciliation that Canada claims to uphold. So Alder's past comments, which he referred to First Nations, I'm sure that you're aware as to all those comments that were made. And it's just not acceptable for an individual that's in the spotlight to be able to make those decisions. I don't think that he only made reference to our political people. He made reference to our people as well. So that doesn't come as something that we will tolerate. It's 2024. We have done a lot of work in terms of our people to be recognized as a people. And we can't keep moving 2 steps forward and then taking 3 steps back. And this appointment here by itself is an insult to our people. I think we have to be very clear. Like once you make those comments, regardless if it's 20 years down the road or whatnot, they stay with you. So your train of thought is that. And we're at a time of reconciliation with our people, and that we be able to not allow that anymore to happen in Manitoba, never mind Canada. Whatever comments that he made at that time, that he comes forward and that there's a process to apologize. But at this point in time, again, like it's 2024, it's not acceptable.
That's AM Chief AMC Ground Chief Kathy Merrick in conversation with CBC Manitoba about this. Charles Adler has declined to comment. It is 4 minutes now to 7 o'clock. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us this morning. Chloe Friesen and Sierra Sanders behind the glass, filling in for Corey and Abby. It is in Winnipeg going to be a hazy day. You can see that out the window here of our studios on Portage Avenue. We'll get into more weather details in a moment. Right now, though, let's go to Megan Ketchison, who's here with other news and headlines.
Well, good morning. Tenants of a downtown Winnipeg high-rise are out of their homes after the building was flooded yesterday. Fire crews were called to 170 Hargrave Street shortly before noon yesterday because of a significant flood. After they stopped the flooding, the crews started working with police to evacuate and secure the 25-story building. The city says about 300 tenants have registered with its emergency social services team. And the first batch of dogs seized by the province earlier this month are now up for adoption. The Winnipeg Humane Society says 3 dogs, 2 males and 1 female, are healthy and old enough to find new homes. They're among the 137 small breed dogs that were seized by animal welfare officials from a home north of Winnipeg on August the 1st. And we'll have more at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Commute is fine at 3 minutes to 7 here, but if you do have an issue, call us. One small thing, Edmonton between Graham and Portage closed today. 788-3093 is where you reach the morning show. It is, as I mentioned, mainly clear, although hazy, 19 in Winnipeg, and might be a little smoky for us today in the city as well. You can see that haze if you're watching YouTube. You can see the sky color. A high of 30 with humidex. It's going to be 35 today is what it's going to feel like. So sticky and grab the water. In the next hour of the show, are you already thinking about back to school? What about how are you feeling about it? Do you have jitters? Are you worried about the kids? What about your kids? Do they have some anxiety about, getting ready to go back soon? Well, it's a thing. A lot of stress at this time of year. With September fast approaching, you might need some advice from someone we're going to talk to in the next hour about how to navigate all of those emotions, which, by the way, can also include excitement as well. In the next hour, in addition, our community reporter was out and about learning all about mushrooms. Shiitake, lion's mane, oyster mushrooms. If you love them, did you ever wonder how to cultivate mushrooms at home? Well, we're going to find out. It is connected to a workshop that you might be able to sign up for, so that's coming up as well. And then our series looking at what is needed in Winnipeg's next police chief continues. We've heard from a number of people on this question. And so in the next hour of the program, we are going to hear from Sheila North, a longtime MMIWG advocate, about what she would like to see in Winnipeg's next chief of police. Danny Smyth's official retirement date's coming up at the beginning of September, and then we will see who will follow him at this critical time in our city's history, and also in the way we're experiencing crime right now. So stay tuned. That is coming up in the next hour of the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and it's right now 1 minute to 7 and World Report.
Today on The Current.
I'm Connie Walker. It's getting harder to find a family doctor in a lot of Canadian communities, but one Ontario town has come up with a new care model to look after people living there. One doctor from that community coming up on The Current.
Well, it has been phenomenal. It has exceeded our expectations.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A beaming Joe Biden is saying farewell to the city of Chicago this morning.
Not a lot to do. Very nice. I mean, the reception was pretty overwhelming.
The U.S. president walked on stage at the Democratic National Convention to roaring cheers. He addressed delegates of his Democratic Party last night as it endorsed a new leader and a new platform. The CBC's Richard Madden is covering the convention in Chicago.
Thank you.
An emotional President Joe Biden wiped away tears and received a standing ovation in his farewell speech at the Democratic National Convention.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more.
Often interrupted by thousands of cheering delegates chanting, "We love you, Joe," Biden's address marks a symbolic passing of the torch to his vice president, Kamala Harris, who's now the party's nominee after his exit from the race last month. But Biden's keynote speech was delayed more than 90 minutes as the opening day of the convention ran far behind schedule. When he finally got on stage, Biden appeared to relish the chance to defend his record and insisted he holds no resentment to the abrupt end of his presidency. Instead, he urged Democrats to rally behind Harris, who made a surprise appearance hours earlier.
Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Biden said naming Harris as his running mate in the last election was the best decision of his political career, and he vowed to support her and her running mate Tim Walz in November.
I promise I'll be the best volunteer Harris and Walz has Canada ever seen.
Biden closed by framing the election as a fight for democracy and freedoms before exiting the stage with his family and the new Harris-Walz ticket standing beside them. Richard Madden, CBC News, Chicago.
The Israel Defense Forces says it has retrieved the bodies of more hostages. They were among the people taken during Hamas's October 7th attack. The IDF says it carried out an operation overnight in Khan Yunis. The bodies of 6 men were found in the Hamas network of tunnels. Israel's military says about 110 hostages are still believed to be in Gaza. About a third of them are presumed dead. This week, there will be more ceasefire negotiations in Cairo. A deal is expected to include the release of hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel. Specialist divers are back in the water off the coast of Sicily. They are searching the site of a sunken superyacht. The inspector of the diving unit says the wreck is so deep underwater, it is slowing the search down. The yacht is now 50 meters below the surface. Divers can't stay underwater for very long. There's also a pile of debris and furniture blocking access to the below-deck cabins. The superyacht sunk when it was hit by a severe storm yesterday. The bodies of 6 people are still believed to be on board, including British tech tycoon Mike Lynch. A controversial real estate purchase will be the focus of a federal committee meeting today in Ottawa. The government of Canada is buying a $9 million condo on what's known as Billionaires Row in New York City. It'll be used by Canada's Consul General. Janice McGregor joins me now from our Parliamentary Bureau with more. And Janice, walk us through why this residence is so controversial.
Marcia, this real estate deal caused a bit of a stir in New York tabloids last month when the buyer was reported as His Majesty the King and Right of Canada. But of course, that's how the paperwork reads for any purchase of a Crown asset or government property. King Charles is not going to sleep here. Canada's Consul General will. Notwithstanding that Global Affairs got a bit of a deal on this, paid significantly below its original asking price, the $9 million price tag did cause some consternation earlier this summer. Does a humble public servant really need a bathroom that's clad with Italian marble? But when the paperwork came out on this, the business case became more clear. The current residence for the Consul General was purchased in 1961. It hasn't been significantly updated since the early 80s. And after some COVID delays, renovation costs had ballooned to well over $2 million. So government asset managers decided to sell the old place as is and buy a new one that didn't need so much work. But get this, the old place, 5 bedrooms on Park Avenue, was listed last week for $13 million. So if the government's able to get that in today's market, the people of Canada might even come out ahead in this.
So if the government is making money off this, why is it getting so much scrutiny?
Well, the opposition demands to have several days of committee hearings on this, where before all the facts were fully understood. And of course, politicians like to be seen to be paying close attention to the public piggy bank, especially when the people that elect them are feeling kind of economically stressed. But we'll see as this committee probe gets going, whether hearings that might have been intended to embarrass the government actually end up making it look strategic.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Canadians will get a better look at the economic landscape this hour. Statistics Canada will release its latest inflation data. Many economists anticipate inflation slowed last month to 2.5%. That would be down from 2.7% in June. And as senior business reporter Anis Hadari tells us, that could lead to a drop in interest rates.
High inflation has been increasing the price of, well, everything for quite a while in Canada, and those prices had been going up faster than ever until high interest rates finally started to slow down the economy. That also meant inflation has been slowing. If that continues, interest rates could drop too.
It is reasonable.
Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said as much just under a month ago.
But the timing is going to depend on incoming data.
The Bank of Canada has already cut interest rates twice this year. It wants inflation to stay between 1% and 3%. The last number dropped to 2.7% for June. If that trend continues, the bank can lighten up on interest rates.
We're likely to see another easing in inflation.
Avery Schenfeld is the chief economist at CIBC Capital Markets in Toronto.
And a lot of the remaining inflation is in things like mortgage costs that the Bank of Canada can actually help out by cutting interest rates.
So while a drop in inflation won't make groceries any cheaper, if the cost of living at least increases more slowly, interest rates and borrowing money will get cheaper. The central bank's next decision on those rates is in the first week of September. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
Fertilizer Canada says a rail shutdown could cost the industry more than $55 million per day. Negotiations between CN Rail, Canadian Pacific Kansas City, and the union representing more than 9,000 workers are ticking down. If a deal is not reached by 1 minute past midnight on Thursday, all rail traffic could stop. Federal Labor Minister Stephen McKinnon says he will be in Montreal today and Calgary tomorrow. He's urging the parties and federal mediators to prevent a shutdown of operations. Nearly 2,000 people in Saskatchewan are now displaced by wildfires. Approaching flames and smoke forced 2 northern communities to evacuate. A major hydroelectric power station is also under threat from fire. The CBC's Alexander Silberman has the latest.
The fire was just across the river.
Maggie Hunter evacuated Sandy Bay, Saskatchewan last Wednesday, leaving her waiting for news at a Saskatoon hotel.
I was just worried about my home, whether I'm going to have one when I get back.
With 1,200 residents, the town is less than 20 kilometers from an out-of-control fire, not far from the Island Falls Hydro Station, which supplies power to most of northeast Saskatchewan. In Birch Narrow's Denny Nation and neighboring Turner Lake, crews continue to attack flames with water bombers. 600 evacuees left the community, mostly by bus, late last week.
Imagine staring at a wall of fire coming towards your community.
Rebecca Lemeg says she was restless the night before fleeing her home, watching flames just a few kilometers from her community. She's one of hundreds of evacuees at hotels in Cold Lake, Alberta, more than 400 kilometers away from home. Others have gone to Lloydminster. Lemeg, who works with the Community Food Centre, is making sure people have everything they need.
We learn along the way that we have this whole team behind us, and it's going great now.
In Birch Narrows, much-needed rainfall Monday helped firefighters make progress, leaving many residents hopeful they will return home soon. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. A little bit wet in parts of the north, and it's going to be hot here in Winnipeg. Welcome to the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa. As mentioned, this is Information Radio on CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. And this hour on the program, our series continues looking at the equalities that people are hoping for in the next police chief of the city of Winnipeg. Danny Smyth's official retirement date is in September. This hour on the program, we've had different people weighing in over the last 5 weeks. And today we have longtime MMIWG advocate Sheila North, who will be in studio to talk about what she would like to see from the next police chief in Winnipeg. In addition, back to school jitters. It's a thing, and with September fast approaching, parents and kids might need some advice about how to get over all the emotions that mix together at this time of year. We'll have a parenting column coming up this half hour. Right now, though, Megan Ketchison is in with our news headlines for your Tuesday. Good morning.
Good morning. A business owner in the Pacific Industrial Area near Notre Dame and McPhillips is pleading with the city to do more to tackle property crime. Thieves have targeted his business 4 times in the last 2 months. He says they stole computers, printers, and even his grandmother's electric wheelchair. And one of Manitoba's most prominent First Nations leaders calls the appointment of this province's newest senator insulting. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is urging the Governor-General to rescind Charles Adler's appointment to the Senate. Merrick says comments the broadcaster made on air 25 years ago about First Nations leaders are offensive. And we'll have more coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Well, let's get into our forecast here. So it's mainly clear. It's 18 degrees. We've been pretty steady this morning, but we lost 1. So 18. Mix of sun and cloud for the forecast in Winnipeg today, and it's going to be hazy, maybe even a little smoky. So a high of 30 today, even hotter than yesterday, which was very sticky. And with Humidex, it's going to feel like 35. In Brandon, cloudy, high 30 as well. In Thompson, it's already raining. A chance of a thunderstorm developing in a high 28. And your commute is moving fine. 788-3093 if you need to update us. Well, it is still summer, but as I alluded to, pretty soon, in a matter of weeks, it's going to be back to school. And whether you're headed to kindergarten or college, it is not always easy for families, kids, parents to go through this period of time. For some words of calm and perspective to deal with the various emotions you might be feeling out there, Wendy Jackson's with us, parenting commentator, and also, by the way, a dentist. Good morning.
Good morning.
I like that we mentioned you're a dentist because you know how to deal with probably a lot of different fears and anxieties.
Yes, it comes up every now and then.
What about back to school? What are the common sort of feelings and jitters for people of all ages?
I think the biggest one is, making friends, and will their friends be in their classroom, and who will their teacher be, and will they have the nice teacher, or will they get too much homework?
How can parents help navigate a household where people are feeling different emotions? So maybe someone's nervous and maybe someone's really excited. And then it ends up being, why aren't you excited? It's going to be great. Because there's so much pressure at this time of year.
There is so much pressure this time of year. And I, maybe having that first day outfit planned, keeping open communication. Don't let the nervous one make the non-nervous one nervous, if that's even possible. Maybe getting together with some classmates, before school starts, bringing their parents over, having coffee, and then the kids can talk. And sometimes they communicate their fears better with their peers.
That's a good idea. What's the advice for parents who have their own anxieties about back to school? Should you hide it from the kids, or do you share some of it?
I think you need to be careful about transferring your anxiety towards your kids, and we don't want to make them too nervous or let them know that we're nervous, because if we're nervous that our kids won't make friends, then they worry about why we're worried, and so I think as much as possible we want to keep our anxiety separate from what our kids are going through.
And what does that look like? At the point of drop off, or if you are upset and feel on the verge of tears, or what does that look like, keeping it to yourself?
Try and keep your tears until you're, driving away in that car or walking away. But, try and keep it as brief as possible, because the longer we hold on to that, the harder that goes. And it's harder for the teachers too, if they're dealing with a bunch of crying kids because their moms have been holding their hands too long. So make it, brief and, as much as you can, cut and run.
Will the child or the teacher tell you to leave, or what's the nature of that interaction?
I think the teachers are, they're trying to establish a relationship with that parent that's going to, hopefully be a good relationship through the year. So they have to be careful what they say. So if you need advice on how to manage that, the teachers will know, the best way to do that, because they do this every year with 40 kids that first day. So, but I think that it's easier for the teacher if you make it short and sweet and try and keep your anxiety checked in the door until you're out of that classroom.
Obviously, we're I think in my head, I've got little kids in my head, right, going off to school with their school bags, backpacks. What about older, the transitions that can bring up a lot of emotions when you're older? Advice to maybe parents or families about anxieties around back to school if kids are going to university and college.
Well, yeah, and if they're leaving home, many of them for the first time for such a long time, it's the dorms will give you a packing list, and you can have that delivered to your university dorm in many cases, which makes the whole packing easier. Thanksgiving will come before you know it, but your kids will, if you could get together maybe with somebody that's going to that same university, so that these peers can talk amongst themselves with their anxieties. But it's an exciting time for kids too, and keep those lines of communication open.
I read that you have said in the past, don't be upset if the kids miss the pets more than you.
That happened in my case.
Did it really?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of financially, because while we're talking about the older students that might be going or leaving the house for the first time, what kind of financial preparations should families be thinking about for that group?
Well, and that starts, financial preparations for university start years before. If you ideally can, open an RESP for your kid and try and get that government grant every year. But you need to have a realistic, practical, sit down conversation with your child and go over budgeting so they know. And if they're having a credit card for the first time, a kid can get in trouble pretty quickly. So I, try and limit the limit on that, the financial limit on that credit card, so they can't get into too much trouble, and review budgeting as you go. But that conversation needs to happen weeks or months, ideally, before they go to school.
When do you worry Oh, go on, sorry.
Oh, just they need to know what they're responsible for. Are they responsible for their partying? Are they responsible for food, utilities, all of those things?
We had a great conversation here on the air a number of years ago about the value or not of a gap year. So if you're finished high school, do you take that gap year for whatever reason, before you go on to post-secondary education potentially, or do you not? You just go straight through and keep going to school. And it was really interesting to see how different people and listeners, families were navigating that and their thoughts on that. What about, students who've graduated high school and university, and they know they're not going on to post-secondary. So they're facing life outside school, but they also have some anxiety about it. What should we understand about that period of time?
And it's, they're going through a different identity change. They've always been a student going off to school in September, and now all of a sudden, they may have friends going back to school and they're not. And they're looking for a job, and they may not get their ideal job right away. They may get a really crummy job that doesn't pay well. And, these kids nowadays, they may be living with us for longer than they expected. And they're not failures if they don't get their ideal job at first, or if they can't afford to move out, and it's the new reality.
Thank you for this, Wendy. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
That's Wendy Jackson, parent and parenting commentator, and by the way, also a dentist, weighing in as we get ready for back to school.
Food, art, music, dance, and more. Cultivation Festival FAMD is back August 19th to 25th. Proudly sponsored by CBC. Come celebrate Manitoba's rich Filipino culture with events taking place all over the city, like Ceremonia, an all-Philippine X art exhibit, Lupa Ay Bahay, a Filipino indigenous craft exhibit, and Sala, a Filipino film festival. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
18 in Winnipeg, 16 in Brandon, 15 in Thompson with rain. We got music next to get us into sports, and it's from Winnipeg pop star Begonia, who's gearing up for a really busy September. Speaking of back to school, she'll be back at it with performances. She has 10 shows lined up over the next month, including a free show if you want to check it out at the Lake House in Wasagaming, right in Clear Lake, where we actually just visited for a live show recently. What a venue that will be. Her recent EP is called Open Swim, and it's the follow-up to her Juno-nominated album Powder Blue, and the lead single on Open Swim is this tune. This is Begonia on CBC and Get to You.
I can only show you what I am. Passing notes in every glass, and my glass is never full. These words, you act like you have never heard. When we both know that's absurd, we've been around it. Can't pretend we are astounded anymore. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I knew how to get to you. Wishing I had something I could do. And I can't contain, don't even try. Like a star up in the sky, you're an explosion, far away and broken in the night. It's hard, feeling like you're on your guard, and you only want to start a conversation based on your alienation, seeing red even in the dark. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I knew how to get to you. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I had something I could do. Wishing I knew how to get to you. Wishing I had something I could do.
Begonia and Get to You. It's 7:24 a.m. on CBC, and it's time for morning sports. Paul McGowan joins us now live on 89.3. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So we are now just over a week away from the start of the Paralympics. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, opening ceremony next Wednesday. A quick point of contention. This 2.5-week layoff between the Olympics and Paralympics is too long. I want to go back to heats and medals and drama. And there's lots of excitement for these games. For the same reason there was a lot of excitement for the Olympics. Things are back to normal. No more social distancing, no more empty venues. Canada's co-chef de mission, Karolina Wisniewska, thinks that between that and the games being held in Paris, these Paralympics could be special.
I'm a lifelong Francophile and lover of all things French and Parisian, so I can't, this is this beautiful coming together. It is the first post-COVID games, but it's in a city that everyone the world over loves and is familiar with, even if they've never been there. Right. Everyone has visions of Paris. So I think what these games will do is it will bring that together for everyone.
I want to say that I, too, am a lover of all things Parisian. In fact, though, I think I just really love bread. It was really impressive to see how Paris turned out for the Olympics a couple of weeks ago. Nearly every event had a sizable crowd, and it's not hard to imagine that excitement carrying over when the Paralympics start next Wednesday.
Oh, and cheese. You have to have cheese.
And cheese, yeah. There's lots of it's all food related though for me.
Let's go to the CFL. The Argonauts spoke to the media yesterday about reinstated quarterback Chad Kelly.
We thought that Kelly himself would speak to the media. He's returning from that 9-game suspension for violating the CFL's gender-based violence policy. Now, Kelly did not speak to reporters, but other members of the Argos did. Here's linebacker Winton McManus.
So people like that on the outside, I would just say, let's let your skeletons out the closet. Nobody's perfect. And, it's not our job to be perfect. It's our job to be human. Just because you know someone else's downfall or someone else's problem, it doesn't make it right for you to go out, kick them out or down on it or something like that. Everybody goes through something. Everybody's battling something. So, I just say, he's still human.
Winton McManus there makes it sound as though Chad Kelly took the last donut at the team breakfast. A reminder that Kelly was suspended for allegedly harassing a team employee over several seasons. Now, it did look like Kelly might start on Thursday in Toronto's game against Saskatchewan. Could still happen, but no official word yet from the Argos.
And let's talk baseball for a moment. There's some interesting comments. I guess you'd characterize them as interesting. A lot of people are reacting to them anyway from a Blue Jays pitcher, right?
Yeah, Toronto starter Chris Bassett, who is never shy about sharing his opinion. He was on a podcast this week and was asked what went wrong with this year's Blue Jays.
I don't want to be one of those guys that talk about the team's issues publicly. I don't want to identify the problems because some of the problems I don't think are fixable. The one thing I will say about the Blue Jays for this year is we put, I think, $700 million into Shohei Ohtani's basket and didn't get him. That was the reality. And then I think we really didn't have a pivot.
People heard those comments and thought that he was throwing management under the bus. He did clarify his intentions yesterday. And essentially what he says he meant was that there was no pivot available. And it's a fair point. There is no player that's comparable to Shohei Ohtani. And so when you miss out on him, it's impossible to replace what he would have brought to the team. Now, that doesn't mean that the team's front office is without its issues. The 2024 Blue Jays are not a good baseball team, but Chris Bassett certainly not trying to force his way out of Toronto with his comments this week.
And I can't help but notice on YouTube the Oakland A's cap.
The Oakland A's? I mean,
How are they doing?
They are not doing well. They are still moving. You know what? I was just in California, and I have this weird soft spot for Oakland Coliseum, and so I went to see an A's game in person, and so that is why I've got the A's cap on.
Oh, cool! My husband and I used to go. That was all our vacations. We built it around going to see different ballparks. So, yeah,
that's what I have started doing. So, I'm up to 7. I am still early on, but I'm getting there.
Ooh, we got to compare notes about apparently bread, cheese, and ballparks.
Let's do it.
Right on. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
Paul McGowan in for Scott Reguera this morning with Morning Sports on CBC. Coming up to news time at 7:30. First, Chloe Friesen's in just to update us on a couple of the closures that are going on in your commute this morning. Hi, Chloe.
Hello. Just a reminder about Edmonton between Graham and Portage. It's closed, but just until 8 p.m. So that is just going to affect your commute today. That's Edmonton between Graham and Portage, closed until 8 p.m. And then there's Shaftesbury Boulevard. It's closed from Wilkes to West Taylor. All northbound and southbound lanes are closed for rail crossing work York, and that is until August 24th. Of course, you can give us a call if you spot a stall, a collision, or anything that's slowing you down. 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Chloe. And coming up, we have our community reporter who's going to bring us an item this morning, and it is all about mushrooms. Whether you like them on pizza or sauteed with butter, mushrooms are a savory classic, of course, but do you know how to cultivate them in your very own kitchen? There is a workshop that offers lessons on that locally, and you can check it out, just like Channelie Vidal did, and we'll hear that right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 7:30. We have a few clouds and 18 in the downtown. Hot and humid today with a gusty south wind and a high of 30. Tenants of a downtown Winnipeg high-rise are out of their homes after the building was flooded yesterday. Fire crews were called to 170 Hargrave Street shortly before noon. They found a significant flood inside. After they stopped the flooding, crews started working with police to evacuate and secure the 25-story building. Sakinat Balagoon, her friend, lives there. She says they came back last night to find the power had been shut off and they had to stay out. Balagoon says she saw people in distress.
I saw babies with their mothers crying. I did see pets here just then. People don't know what to do. People are just hanging around confused. And I think they deserve much more better help.
The company that manages the apartment building did not respond to CBC's request for comment last night. The city says about 300 tenants registered with its emergency social services team, and staff with animal services were on hand to help people with their pets. A business owner in the Pacific Industrial Area near Notre Dame and McPhillips is pleading with the city to do more to tackle property crime. Jesse McDowell owns a line sewer and water on Myrtle Street. Thieves have targeted his business 4 times in the last 2 months. McDowell says they stole computers, printers, even his grandmother's electric wheelchair.
They pried open the garage door to get in through the cold storage of the unit, and we've had attempts on our shop, which is just at the corner, where they've broken through concrete cinder blocks, and we've had to repair that, where they tried to tunnel in. I guess the plywood stopped them.
McDowell once found a person passed out in his offices. He says damage totals more than $100,000. A Manitoba broadcaster's past comments have reignited outrage after his appointment to the Senate. Charles Adler was investigated in 1999 for comments he made on air, including calling First Nations leaders uncivilized boneheads. The Canadian Broadcast Standards Council found the statements were fair and political comment, but Grand Chief Kathy Merrick of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs says the remarks are offensive. She wants Adler's Senate appointment rescinded.
It's 2024. We have done a lot of work in terms of our people to be recognized as a people, and we can't keep moving 2 steps forward and then taking 3 steps back.
Merrick says she believes Adler's comments were not limited to First Nations leaders, but were offensive to Indigenous people as a whole. Adler declined to comment. A healthcare union in Manitoba is facing some blowback. The Canadian Union of Public Employees is recommending a new tentative agreement for its support workers like healthcare aides and home care attendants. But while CUPE likes the deal, another union, MGEU, does not. Support workers represented by MGEU recently voted against a similar deal. Debbie Boissonneau is the former president of CUPE Local 204. She's voting against the agreement. She says it does not do enough to raise some of the lowest wages in healthcare.
I'm getting a lot of calls. A lot of members are upset that they didn't see some of the incentives that were offered to the nurses, and they are recommending their friends vote no. I'm hearing a lot of no's. I'm not hearing a lot of yeses.
CUPE members are voting on the deal this week. If it's rejected, the union will have permission to strike, but it doesn't mean a strike will happen anytime soon. In international news, Kamala Harris got a rousing welcome last night as she briefly took the stage at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The CBC's Richard Madden reports from Chicago.
An emotional President Joe Biden wiped away tears and was given a standing ovation as thousands of delegates cheered "We love you, Joe" in his farewell speech at the Democratic National Convention.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more.
Biden's speech marks a symbolic passing of the torch to his vice president, Kamala Harris, who's now leading the party after Biden's exit from the race last month. Biden framed November's election as a fight for democracy and freedoms, and threw his full support behind the new Harris-Walz tickets, vowing he'll be their best campaign volunteer. Richard Madden, CBC News, Chicago.
The first batch of dogs seized by the province earlier this month are now up for adoption. The Winnipeg Humane Society says 3 dogs, 2 males and 1 female, are healthy enough and old enough to find new homes. They are among 137 small breed dogs that were seized by animal welfare officials from a home north of Winnipeg on August 1st. Carly Peters with the Humane Society says some of the other dogs will be cared for by other rescue agencies. Peters says the society continues to deal with an overwhelming number of animals in its care.
We're still on an intake freeze. In shelter, there's over 200 animals. We have 250 animals in foster. Yet we were at critical capacity before this event happened, and we're still in that space. It is nice to get a few out on the floor, but there is a lot more animals to come for sure.
Officials have said many of the 137 dogs that were seized needed medical attention. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's get into our regional forecast now here at CBC with Chloe Friesen. Hello.
Good morning. Today in Winnipeg, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud. Hazy skies, wind becoming south 20, gusting to 40 early this afternoon. A high of 30. Forecasted for today, with the humidex feeling more like 35. Right now here in Winnipeg at the Forks, it's 18 degrees, partly cloudy out there. Moving to Brandon right now, mostly cloudy skies, 16 degrees. Today, looking at cloudy skies, becoming a mix of sun and cloud this morning. Also hazy in Brandon. A windy day as well. Wind becoming south 30, gusting to 50 this morning. Forecasted high of 30, and with the humidex, it's going to feel more like 38 in Brandon. So prepare yourselves for that today. In Dauphin right now, cloudy skies, 21 degrees. Looking at mainly cloudy skies, a 30% chance of showers this morning and later this afternoon with the risk of a thunderstorm. Hazy skies, wind becoming south 20, gusting to 40 this morning. A high of 30 for you folks in Dauphin with the humidex feeling more like 38. Light rain in Thompson at the moment, 15 degrees. We're looking at a high of 28 today in Thompson with the humidex feeling more like 34. 30% chance of showers this morning and early this afternoon with the risk of a thunderstorm. Here in Winnipeg, mix of sun and cloud, hazy skies, a high of 30 with the humidex, could feel more like 35. So that's nice if you like humidity.
Sticky.
It's a little sticky. Turning to the commute, I got a call on the commuter line from Julie who says, Maryland between Ellis and St. Matthews, there are emergency crews in the right-hand lanes. You can pass by, but just make sure you are doing so carefully. Again, that's Maryland between Ellis and St. Matthews. Thank you for that call. And if there's anything else out there that you think your fellow commuters should know about, you can let us know by calling 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Chloe. And thanks to people who are calling this morning with the updates. Well, next on the show, there are many people who like to grow their own fruits and vegetables. They're probably growing pretty well, given the summer we've had. But have you ever considered growing your own mushrooms at home? From shiitake to piopino, there are many varieties that can be cultivated in your house. And tomorrow afternoon at the West Broadway Farmers Market, there's a workshop you can take part in. People can learn how to grow mushrooms in your home. It's being put on by Tom Nagy of River City Mushrooms, and CBC Manitoba's community reporter Shanley Vidal stopped by Tom's cultivation room to learn more.
So this is a 1-gallon pail that I've drilled holes in the side, and so this is where the mushrooms are actually going to grow out of the pail. Oyster mushrooms are what we're going to be working with on Wednesday because this is a very fast-growing, tenacious, easily cultivated species that will grow under a wide variety of different circumstances. On the inside, we have, we're going to be layering hydrated hardwood sawdust with layers of spawn, which is essentially the mycelium of the fungus.
Where does the spawn come from?
I generate spawn by using liquid culture, which is essentially these jars right here. So in these jars is a suspension of living mycelium. I will draw some of this, just like someone would take from a sourdough culture.
Okay. It makes me think of something that maybe has been left in the fridge a little too long.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are they all amber colored like this?
They tend to be, and that's just the personal recipe that I use.
I'm wondering about the container. You do have the holes, but the holes are small. So how do the mushrooms grow out of such a small space?
Yeah, so in the wild, as you might be able to fathom, mushrooms will essentially find the weakest point in the trunk of a tree or a stump or a branch or something, and they exert enough force that they can actually tear open the bark of trees. And so to be able to grow out of a little hole like this is no sweat for them, absolutely.
What's it going to look like when they all grow and are ready for harvest?
Oyster mushrooms are a classic cluster forming species, and so you'll have numerous little pinheads of baby mushrooms starting to grow out from this hole, and then they will all mature at the same time. And so you'll end up probably with a cluster that's about a fist or a fist and a half size, growing out of 1, 2, 3, or all 4 holes on the side of this pail. And so it makes it really easy to facilitate a harvest, because you can just run a sharp knife. If you hold the cluster from the bottom, just run it right behind it and it'll pop right off.
Behind us, we have this wall of bags.
So here I have various different species and strains of mushrooms in a variety of different levels of maturation. And so basically when people purchase a grow kit from me or from anyone else, even online, they're going to look something like this. This is the mycelium, which is the body of the fungus. And so these are very special bags in the sense that they are autoclavable, so I can run them in my pressure sterilizers at higher than boiling point, and the plastic won't melt, tear, burst, distort, anything like that. There's these filter patches in the front because, of course, this being a living thing, it still has to be able to breathe, but it has to still remain sterile. And so here I have Piopino, which is a wonderful, lovely variety that I like to work with. I have a variety of different oyster mushrooms. I have white oyster, I have black pearl oyster mushroom, and I also have these reishi, which are very phototropic. And so they are growing towards the light. That's why they're all kind of pointing towards the window, and they can be grown in situ inside of these bags.
This looks a lot chunkier than the other ones.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so essentially what's happening there is the block itself is shrinking because they're using energy to produce the mushrooms. So that's why it kind of looks almost shrink wrapped inside, because it is actually shrinking. It's releasing moisture as it's growing. Each individual species and strain has its own particular nuances as to what the mycelium is going to look like. Some of them, like the oyster mushrooms, have a very white, fluffy, tenacious, obvious mycelium. The lion's mane, for example, this one right here is mature and ready to be used. It will never get as white and as dense as the oyster mushroom mycelium. That's just the nature of how it behaves and how it grows. For folks that want to grow mushrooms inside, any room that has a window that has diffuse indirect light coming in, as long as it's natural light, will be more than enough for mushrooms to grow. You cannot grow them in the dark. That's a question I get a lot too, is like, oh, do I need to find like a deep dark sort of spot in my house? And it's like, that's actually a common myth.
When you're growing the mushrooms, you store them in the zippered shelving unit, humidity controlled?
Essentially the unit is entirely enclosed all on its own. It pulls in air from outside, humidifies it in line, and then pumps that humidity into the tent, and that will slowly cascade down from the top into the bottom.
So this is lion's mane?
Correct. It's a very mild flavor, a very soft texture.
Yeah. It's so delicate. It makes me nervous to touch it. Do they fall apart easily?
Yes. I mean, the base of the mushroom is actually quite sturdy, but all of these individual little pieces, these are quite delicate. As you can see, it's very kind of like bouncy and airy. But they're a real showstopper at markets. Like something like this is definitely going to turn heads.
Okay.
So this is an example of a Piopino mushroom.
That one looks way more sturdy than the lion's mane.
Yes, these ones have a very distinct mushroom-like orientation where you have a very obvious stem and a cap, and then the gills underneath the cap. What's unique about the Piopino is that they have these little coverings underneath the gills, underneath the caps.
These white things.
Yes, exactly. And so that will tear when the gills are ready to produce their spores. And conveniently, that's exactly when you should pick them.
So that is our community reporter at CBC, Shanley Vidal, out in conversation about cultivating mushrooms with Tom Nagy of River City Mushrooms. The Small Space Mushroom Cultivation Workshop, by the way, as I mentioned, takes place tomorrow afternoon, and it is happening at the West Broadway Farmers Market.
Angeline Tadaweo hosts The Block.
Afrobeats to jazz, hip-hop to R&B, calypso, Kez the Dan, Michelle Montano, Bob Marley, Bounty Killer. So we really give all these artists a chance to shine, and the key is in the programming, in making it make sense, and making sure that the music is fluid, a fluid experience.
The Block with Angeline Tadaweo. Available now on CBC Listen.
Time right now is 7:45 a.m. and local talent singer-songwriter Sandman is no stranger to Winnipeg's music scene. Been releasing music here since 2019. Recently, you might have caught Sandman at the Heart of the City Music Festival. But we have something from back in his 2022 album. This is called Nice Guys. Pardon me, the album's called Nice Guys Finished Last, but this tune's called Summer Lover.
Say, can I be your lover? Not only for the summer, talking winter, spring, and autumn. So can I get your number? She said, why you talking crazy? I know you got a lady. If you wanna be my baby, you're gonna have to chase me. Catch me if you can. She be stubborn like a torrent. Told her to take my hand, she ain't even taking orders. Struggled in her life, she needed some affection. Running every night, but she still got no direction. I know I could be the one that you rely on. Wake up every day and make you smile. I know you've been waiting for a while. We'll be counting money on a layover. She said she ain't really tryna wait, no, no. Got my hands up for the bitter Range Rover. Girl, you make it hard for me to stay sober. We'll be counting money on a layover. She said she ain't really tryna wait, no, no. Got my hands up for the bitter Range Rover. Girl, you make it hard for me to stay sober. Can I be your lover? Not only for the summer, talking winter, spring, and autumn. So can I get your number? She said, why you talking crazy? I know you got a lady. If you wanna be my baby, you're gonna have to chase me. I hope I can show you love. Take a chance and change your mind. I ain't trying to waste your time. Love like this is hard to find. We count money on a layover. She said she ain't really tryna wait, oh no. Got my hands up for the bitter Range Rover. Girl, you make it hard for me to stay sober. We'll be counting money on a layover. She said she ain't really tryna wait, oh no. Got my hands up for the bitter Range Rover. Girl, you make it hard for me to stay sober. Can I be your lover? Not only for the summer, talking winter, spring, and autumn. So can I get your number? She said, why you talking crazy? I know you got a lady. If you wanna be my baby, you're gonna have to chase me.
Sandman and Summer Lover on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's 11 minutes to 8 o'clock here with the team. Chloe Friesen and Sierra Sanders behind the glass today. 18 degrees, mainly clear out there. A little hazy, could be smoky though. High of 30 in Winnipeg today. We'll have a mix of sun and cloud with that humidex. It's going to feel more like 35. Well, up next on the show, the search is on for a new Winnipeg police chief. That is because the current chief, Danny Smythe, retires in September. So we've been doing a series of conversations conversations with people, asking what qualities are needed and what priorities should be set by the next Winnipeg police chief. We've been asking in August community members those questions. And so far, we have heard from an online citizen watch group that represents some neighborhoods in South Winnipeg. We had former police chief Devon Clunas, and we also heard from a co-founder of the Winnipeg Police Accountability Coalition. Today, Sheila North is in studio, MMIWG advocate, former journalist, previous Grand Chief of Manitoba, Kiewit, Nawi, Okimakanak, and member of Bunabonabee Cree Nation. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd be remiss if I don't just take a moment to say I'm sorry for what's happening in Bunabonabee. I know everyone's quite stressed about the fire, of course. So.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Weighing in on the series, why don't we start with the big question that I posed, and then we'll maybe dig into some of the history here with the service. What are the qualities that you think are necessary in whoever is going to be the next Winnipeg police chief in our city?
Well, since it's a series, I'm sure you've heard a lot, but I'll add to the pile that they at least need to be a person of color, and preferably for me and a lot of other people, an Indigenous person. A true Indigenous person who didn't just discover they were Indigenous yesterday, but someone who grew up in the community and understands the trauma and the history of Indigenous people and how Canada came to be what it is. So I think that someone needs to have at least that basic quality, if not an Indigenous person, but someone that understands and grew up knowing what it's like to be a minority.
Why is that critical at this point in Winnipeg? And also when you think about the relationships that have deteriorated, because we've heard a lot about that part of this is going to be about rebuilding trust. We have to go somewhere positive. But why to you is that critical right now?
Because I think the relationship with Indigenous people, especially in this city, which has been tagged the most racist sometimes in the last decade even, needs to repair that relationship the most, I think. I think it's the most damaged. And it's not a surprise when we look at the history of everything and we look at how we all learn together as a society of what Indigenous people are and who we are and what we're not and what we've been subjected to. So I think that it's critical.
How would you describe the relationship that you have had over the past years with Winnipeg Police, Sheila?
Oh gosh, I would say it's up and down, highs and lows for sure. I've had personal family members and really personal interactions with police that have been both really positive, but also extremely negative and very hurtful. And either professionally and personally, I've had both interactions, so it hasn't been consistent.
What power do you think that the chief has to affect change in the overall service? What's the importance to you of whoever this leader will be?
Is very, very huge because they set the tone. Anyone in power, any at the head of organization, ultimately sets the tone of the organization and the culture. So they need to have a strong sense of intolerance against racism and bigotry and dismissiveness of people that are, in the marginalized groups. And also, of course, everyone else that needs respect when they are in time of need, when they need Winnipeg Police. But I think that they definitely have to have that ability to be brave, bold, and boisterous about standing up against anything that feels like there is a tone of racism in it.
Obviously, April 2020 was a critical point in our community when 3 Indigenous people were killed by police in separate incidents within a span of 10 days. But as you said, and you were talking about your own, personal interactions and family members, you said you've had both positive and negative interactions with police over the years. What to you will rebuild trust, both at that personal level for people who say I've had good and negative interaction, but also on that more macro level when we've had such serious things happen in our community?
When we see open and clear public dialogue that in the larger part, in the greater part of Winnipeg Police, that they show publicly that they are making attempts to learn and to grow and to be good citizens and to be good neighbors to everyone. I know a few I don't know many cops personally, but I know the ones that I do know are very integral, kind, and strong people. But overall, I think that we need to see an effort that Winnipeg police are truly towards a path of reconciliation, not only to just themselves, not only to Indigenous people, but to themselves as well, because they also are on a journey to reverse this negative relationship that they seem to have foster as a group.
We've had some changes under Danny Smythe in terms of outreach and some additional training, and we've covered all these different things. Obviously, it hasn't taken us to a place where that community relationship, I think this is not even arguable, is anywhere near repaired. What has to happen with the service? You're talking about representation. That's the first thing you said. But how far does that have to extend? And what would you like to see to try to change the mindset you're talking about, some of the things that are baked in that are continuing to cause the service not to be meeting people's needs, and for things, as you said, like racism to still be living systemically within the service?
Well, I think that the overall tone needs to be displayed, that people are growing and learning, because most people that I would say that are Indigenous, especially First Nation, that I know more of, it's not their first instincts to call police when they're in trouble. Most of the time, they'll try and solve things themselves, and sometimes that makes things worse, either for themselves or for other people, because they don't feel like they have the backup of Winnipeg Police. And so we need to see a new police chief that brings solutions, that brings ideas, that will be open and transparent and listens to the community. They need to understand and meet people at their level, not just in high schools where, there's some criticism of their presence there and sometimes they're loved being there. But, that kind of thing, they need to be in the community and representative. I think it would be hard to recruit Indigenous police officers. It always is, I think. But that's another effort that should not be stopped. And I think we need to do a lot of work for sure.
Just lastly, obviously, it's been 10 years. The march just happened since Tina Fontaine was killed, was murdered. What kind of commitment would you like to see from the new chief to addressing the ongoing problems with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit people?
A real commitment to be inclusive and to be mindful and kind to all people and Indigenous people. I think I had a lot of hope in our outgoing police chief. We had a really good relationship, I think. Many of us did. I think he listened for a long time, but it was extremely hurtful to see almost a reversal when the landfill issue came up, and the women in the landfill especially, it felt like I was being gaslit, and that's not a good feeling. So there is a lot of repair that needs to be done. So someone that will be brave and bold enough to say that things need to change, and they will change. And I hope and I wish the committee the very best. And I know it's not going to be an easy task. And anyone that thinks that they want to go for it and they have all these qualities, I think don't underestimate yourself, because I know there's a lot of good Indigenous police officers there that probably would be really good.
Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
This has been our series looking at what's Winnipeg's next police chief, what is needed from that person, and what tone they will set for Winnipeg moving forward. It's a series of conversations. Sheila North has been with us, MMIWG advocate, former journalist, and previous Grand Chief of Manitoba, Kiiwetinowi, Okimakanak, and a member of Bunabonabee Cree Nation. We did ask the Winnipeg Police Service for an exit interview with Chief Danny Smythe. We were told the chief does not plan to do interviews before his retirement in September. If you want to weigh in on the question, 788-320 605. Headlines now with Megan Ketchison.
A healthcare union in Manitoba is facing some blowback. The Canadian Union of Public Employees is recommending a new tentative agreement for its support workers like healthcare aides and home care attendants. But while CUPE likes the deal, the other union, MGEU, does not. Support workers represented by MGEU recently voted against a similar deal. And a Manitoba broadcaster's past comments have reignited outrage after his appointment to the Senate. We'll find out why coming up.
Maryland between Ellis and St. Matthews, emergency crews in the right lane. Otherwise, we're looking for a hot day in Winnipeg, high of 30. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
It's been a year of change for the band The Beaches. They got dropped by their label, they fired their manager, and just about all of them went through a breakup. All these things led to the biggest song of their careers. Two members of The Beaches will be here to tell you their story and how they're better than ever. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Connie Walker. It's getting harder to find a family doctor in a lot of Canadian communities, but one Ontario town has come up with a new care model to look after people living there. One doctor from that community coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Inflation is moving at its slowest pace since March 2021. Statistics Canada released its data for the month of July. It shows inflation slowed at a rate of 2.5%. That is down from 2.7% in June. The CBC senior business reporter Anis Hadari has the details.
2.5% inflation, a drop in the inflation rate again compared to July of last year. The number is in line with what many economists were predicting, so no big surprise. Overall, prices in Canada are still going up, but at a pace that's within the Bank of Canada's target range. Statistics Canada is calling the slowdown in inflation broad-based, though it points out lower prices for cars and electricity were some factors here. With overall inflation continuing to slack, economists' predictions still hold, essentially that interest rates will be cut again. But there are other economic indicators to watch too, like the employment rate. Slowdowns in the job market could determine just how much and how quickly interest rates come down. After the Bank of Canada lowered its policy-setting interest rate twice over the summer, it will make its next announcement on September 4th. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
Democratic Party members will turn their attention to presidential nominee Kamala Harris today. But the first night of the National Convention was about Joe Biden passing the torch. The U.S. president gave an emotional address in Chicago. The CBC's Idil Musa is there covering the convention. And Idil, take us through day one.
Well, yesterday was really about Joe Biden. His speech last night was a goodbye and I love you to Americans. Biden reflected on his career and, in his view, the accomplishments of his administration. He also contrasted his political record with Donald Trump's, saying he felt inspired to run for office after watching the developments in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017, when hundreds of white supremacists rallied in that city and violent clashes broke out. Here's more from his speech.
Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally. They didn't even bother to wear their hoods. Hate was on the march in America.
Biden also gave a ringing endorsement of Kamala Harris, saying she will be a president America can be proud of. There was a major protest yesterday calling for an end to U.S. military support of Israel. And while Biden did not address that specifically, he did vow to continue working to help bring the hostages home, to end the war in Gaza, and deliver a ceasefire.
What are we expecting today?
Well, delegates will participate in a ceremonial roll call today. Harris became the party's official nominee earlier this month after receiving a majority of votes during a virtual roll call. Today's vote is meant to be a celebration of her nomination. The theme of the convention today is a bold vision for America's future, but it will be a former president that will be front and center. America's first Black president, Barack Obama, will deliver a speech tonight in his political hometown.
All right. Thank you, Ethel.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Idil Musa in Chicago. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is now in Cairo. Ceasefire talks continue there this week. Right now, Blinken is pushing for a bridging deal, something Israel and Hamas can agree to that will put them on the path to peace. Sasha Petrusik is in Jerusalem following developments. And Sasha, where do negotiations stand right now?
Well, after meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, Blinken said this is a decisive moment, maybe the last opportunity to get a ceasefire deal that would also see the hostages released. So the timing is critical. Netanyahu has said that he supports the American proposal. So the pressure is really on the militant group Hamas, which was not at the table during the talks in Doha last week and says it won't be at talks in Cairo this week. They are involved, though, through Egyptian and Qatari mediators. Hamas spokesman in Lebanon did say that he doesn't really understand why the Americans are pushing this. He thinks that they are trying to cater to Israeli demands while ignoring Hamas's demands. He says that they don't need more negotiations. What they need is just to implement the plan that was proposed by President Biden back in May. That one would have called for a 6-week initial ceasefire with negotiations that could extend that, and also a withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza gradually.
The Israel Defense Forces says it has retrieved the bodies of more hostages. What can you tell us about that?
These are 6 hostages, all of them men. All of them are from 2 kibbutzes in the area right around the border with Gaza. Their bodies were found in a tunnel in the Khan Yunis area in southern Gaza. They'd probably been dead for a few months, several of them. The others seem to have been abandoned during Israeli airstrikes when their captors fled. There's about 100 hostages now that remain. The military says a third or more are believed to be dead.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC, Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Ukraine's parliament is creating a legal path to ban the Russia-linked minority Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It passed new legislation this morning. The bill bans the Russian Orthodox Church from Ukrainian territory. And if the courts approve, it will also ban any other affiliated religious organizations. Ukraine's government says the minority church is a hotbed of Russian influence and is complicit in the Kremlin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Specialist divers are back in the water off the coast of Sicily. They are searching the site of a sunken super yacht.
Le difficoltà del caso sono dettate dalla profondità che non consente tempi di lavoro elevati.
The inspector of the diving unit says the wreck is so deep underwater it is slowing the search down. The yacht is now 50 meters below the surface. Divers can't stay underwater for very long. There is also a pile of debris and furniture blocking access to the below-deck cabins. The super yacht sunk when it was hit by a severe storm yesterday. The bodies of 6 people are still believed to be on board, including British tech tycoon Mike Lynch. India's top court has set up a task force of doctors. They are expected to make recommendations on the safety of healthcare staff at their workplaces. The Supreme Court's order is in response to the rape and killing of a trainee doctor in Calcutta earlier this month. A hospital volunteer was arrested and charged in connection. The court is also urging doctors to call off their strike and return to work. Doctors and healthcare workers have been holding protests and in some cases temporarily refusing non-emergency patients. They say they will decide on whether to end the demonstrations later today. Yukon's government says work can finally begin to protect the land and water. The Victoria Gold Mine is under receivership. Its facility failed 2 months ago during a massive rock slide. Gold is chemically extracted from rock using a cyanide solution. An estimated 300 million liters of the solution spilled into the environment. Julian Green tells us how the cyanide plume may be moving.
Sylvia Frisch uses a scythe to cut tall grass for her ponies.
If the water is poisoned, the land is poisoned, the people are poisoned.
Her house is first downstream from the mine, and Frisch says her lifestyle and her birch syrup business are under threat. And she says it may be too late to prevent environmental devastation.
I think my confidence in hard rock mining is over. If it ever really existed, it's over now.
The territorial government has tasked consulting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers with accomplishing what Victoria Gold botched. That includes installing a barrier to stabilize the site, building more wastewater storage, and a series of wells to intercept contaminated groundwater. John Stryker, the Minister of Mines, says work on those is underway right now.
So how will we rebuild trust? By making sure we do everything we can right now to protect the environment in Dublin Gulch before it becomes an environmental catastrophe.
The heap leach facility is located at the top of Dublin Gulch Valley. Below, about a kilometer away, is Haggart Creek, where in recent weeks elevated levels of cyanide have been detected and nearly 100 fish have been found dead. Engineers have warned that every day a cyanide plume inches closer to the waterway, which empties into a network of rivers that eventually connect to the territory's largest, the Yukon River. The cause of the failure still remains unknown, and the territory has committed to launching an investigation into that. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. One of the most read stories at cbcnews.ca, what we know about the capsized super yacht off the Sicilian coast. That is on our main page. I'm Marcia Young.
Some nice sunshine now in the downtown in Winnipeg. You can see it through our window here of our CBC studios. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Thanks for joining us. Tuesday morning, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app or on YouTube is where you're joining us this morning, and thank you for it as well. It is going to be really hot today. We're going to get into that in a moment. Also, this half hour on the program, we're going to talk about crime. We have, throughout this summer, been hearing a lot of concerns about crime across the city. But this is specifically some business crimes, from tires being slashed and windows being smashed. It's been a tough summer specifically for some business owners in the Pacific industrial neighborhood of Winnipeg. They say it is only getting worse. So we're going to hear one business owner's concerns coming up this half hour specifically. In addition, you've been hearing about the Democratic National Convention, which continues down south. We'll hear more from President Joe Biden. U.S. President spoke last night. Let's get into headlines first here in Manitoba with developing stories. Megan Ketcherson is back at 8:11.
Well, good morning. Tenants of a downtown Winnipeg high-rise are out of their homes after the building was flooded yesterday. Fire crews were called to 170 Hargrave Street shortly before noon because of significant flooding. Now, after they stopped the water flowing, crews started working with police to evacuate and secure the 25-story building. The city says about 300 tenants have registered with its emergency social services team. And the first batch of dogs seized by the province earlier this month are now up for adoption. The Winnipeg Humane Society says 3 dogs, 2 males and 1 female, are healthy enough to find homes. They're among the 137 small breed dogs that were seized by animal welfare officials from a home north of Winnipeg on August 1st. And we'll have more at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's get into this forecast now and a couple things that are going on in traffic. Chloe Friesen's in with all of that.
Hello. We're looking at smoky conditions at the airport here in Winnipeg right now. It's currently 19 degrees with those smoky skies. Feels like it's making the sun a little bit more golden, which is beautiful, but also for a very disappointing reason, which is that wildfire smoke. So if that does affect you, if you do have issues with your lungs, your heart, don't spend too much time outside today, or don't do any strenuous activity outside. Today in Winnipeg, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud, those hazy skies, as I mentioned. Wind becoming south 20, gusting to 40. Early this afternoon, a forecasted high of 30 degrees, and with the humidex 35. Right now in Thompson, we're actually looking at thunderstorms. It's 14 degrees storming in Thompson at the airport. We talked about the risk of a thunderstorm, and here it is. 30% chance of showers, early this afternoon, that thunderstorm risk. Local smoke also in Thompson. A forecasted high of 28 with the humidex making things feel more like 34 degrees. In Dauphin, we are looking at mainly sunny skies, 22 degrees. We're looking at a mainly cloudy day overall in Dauphin, 30% chance of showers this morning and late this afternoon. You're also looking at a risk of a thunderstorm in Dauphin, hazy skies. A high of 30 with the humidex feeling more like 38.
So it is hot across the province. How's the commute this morning?
Yeah, not too bad. We are looking at Maryland between Ellis and St. Matthews. Emergency crews are in the right-hand lanes. You can pass through. Just make sure you're doing so carefully. If there's anything else, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, a Winnipeg man and business owner says not a day goes by without someone trying to break into his business, from cut fences to smashed windows. Tyler Whitlaw says, and his business on Notre Dame and McPhillips is, as I mentioned, daily being affected. He owns On Time Group. It's an electric and plumbing company. It's in the Pacific Industrial neighborhood at Notre Dame and McPhillips. And he says it's not just his business. There's also neighboring businesses there that have been hit by a string of thefts and vandalism. And he says he's scared now to go into work. CBC's Michaela De Los Santos visited Tyler at his business yesterday, and he shared more of what the past few months have been like.
If we leave anything out overnight, it's vulnerable to being stolen within 24 hours.
And how many times have you broken into? You mentioned about your vans here.
Essentially, with us being careful, we don't leave much for them to take, but they still do damage trying to take a look. Last week we had a big window smashed for a box of donated clothing. We have some of our older fleet vans here that are not really on the road anymore, but we still have them. We haven't sold them or anything like that. And they get routed through weekly, doors removed, windows smashed. I just noticed today that it looks like they're popping up the motor or popping the hood to get at something in the motor. So they really are not scared of being caught because they're on camera and they know and they don't care. So really, they're pretty reckless in the amount that they're willing to do to get even $5 worth of anything. They'll hop the fence, they'll drive in. If the gate's open, like we do have a gate, if we lock it, they cut it and open it, so it's kind of lost its effect. But yeah, they'll hop a barbed wire fence, no problem. They cut through it because they have the chain or the snips for wire. Our neighbors had their rooftop ACs cut and harvested for copper, so they went up a 3-story building behind you to get the copper out of the condensers, right? So there you're looking at $20,000 of damage for $200 of copper. The damages to my assets would be tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and they've stolen hundreds of dollars, right? So the offset's huge. Like MPI claims it'd be thousands of dollars for repairs. That hood there will be $2,000 that they did last night, and they got nothing. They just gave up. So the offset on damages versus what's taken is tenfold.
And this usually happens overnight, not in like broad
Yeah,
daylight?
typically midnight till 5 a.m. is when they come through on the cameras.
Within like the past few months, how many incidents have you had like for your business?
There's people through the area every evening.
Yeah.
Depends what they do. Sometimes they just walk through, sometimes they look, and now that they've been smashed or damaged, they kind of see someone's already been through and they know there's nothing left. But yeah, we would never leave anything that's for my day-to-day business out in the open,
And
even
you-
during the day. If you parked your car here, tomorrow it would be rooted through.
How has it affected day-to-day business for On Time?
If I was in a situation where I left things in near my office that were needed day to day, it would affect me every day. So I've had to change my business so it can't be affected by it.
And you mean change your business in what way?
Well, my guys take their vans home. We don't leave everything's in our secure facility where it would take much more effort for them to break into my warehouse. So luckily that hasn't happened yet. But I guess if you leave anything in a parking lot, it's written off, it's gone.
Have you had to enforce more security measures? Have you had to go through like higher overnight security?
Well, our camera system monitored, and they do dispatch people relatively quick. Sometimes they arrive within 5 to 10 minutes. Police reports and stuff, just nothing happens. If you make a police report, it's recorded, but I don't know, I probably have 40 of those and nothing happens. So
You haven't been updated since?
yeah, I don't know if 41 police reports will do anything, or 42 or 43.
Why do you think this is happening?
I think that they're just not scared of any repercussions. I guess the police are busy doing things that are worse than car break-ins or whatever the explanation is. And it's at the point where either they're blatantly, like our camera system has a speaker, so the people say that people are dispatched and will be there in 5 minutes, and they just smoke a cigarette and keep doing what they're doing. They really don't care.
Do you expect any sort of action from local government? What would you like to see them do?
I think we need to increase penalties for minor offenses where people are deterred from doing things where right now they smash a window, walk down, smash another window, and then another and another. I also live in an area in Winnipeg where one street will get 18 broken windows in an evening down a street. Like, they really don't care. So obviously, if they don't care, we need to make them care.
Anything else that you'd want to talk about that we didn't ask?
No, I just hope for change. I mean, it's pretty tough to run your business where you have to essentially accommodate where things are fully secured like a bank, just to run a simple mechanical business. I think every business is affected. There's not a business that's safe or not affected. If you're in this general area of the downtown area, I don't think anything's safe. If that doesn't change, then our inner city areas or businesses are going to struggle, where they're going to move out, and then you're going to have less businesses and less things in the downtown, and I think the area will get worse.
That's Tyler Whitlaw, president of On Time Group, located in Pacific Industrial near Notre Dame and McPhillips. And in conversation there with CBC's Michaela De Los Santos, who visited the business yesterday. If you want to read more about this story and what's been happening in that particular part of Winnipeg, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
Well, did you stay up late watching any of what's happening down south? The Democratic National Convention kicked off in Chicago yesterday. It is a chance for the party's presidential nominee Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz to step into the national and international spotlight. And some big names in the Democratic Party, both past and present, are planning to address the energetic crowd. Now, last night already, Hillary Clinton was on stage. Barack Obama will be on stage tonight. Last night, though, the main speaker that closed out the evening was President Joe Biden. He spoke about his political accomplishments and why he says there's much at stake in this election.
This will be the first presidential election since January 6th. On that day, we almost lost everything about who we are as a country. And that threat, this is not hyperbole, that threat is still very much alive. Donald Trump says he will refuse to accept the election result if he loses again. Think about that. He means it. Think about that. He's promising a bloodbath if he loses, in his words. And that he'll be a dictator on day one, in his own words. By the way, this sucker means it. No, I'm not joking. Think about it. Anybody else said that in the past, you'd think he was crazy. He is crazy, but you'd think it was an exaggeration, but he means it. We can't let that happen. Folks, all of us carry a special obligation. Independents, Republicans, Democrats. We saved democracy in 2020, and now we must save it again in 2024. The vote of each of us cast this year will determine whether democracy and freedom will prevail. It's that simple. It's that serious. And the power is literally in your hands. History is in your hands. Not hyperbole. It's in your hands. America's future is in your hands. Let me close with this. Nowhere else in the world could a kid with a stutter and modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, grow up to sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. That's because America is and always has been a nation of possibilities. Possibilities. We must never lose that. Never. Kamala and Tim understand that this nation must continue to be a place of possibilities, not just for the few of us, but for all of us. But join me in promising your whole heart to this effort, and where my heart will be. I promise I'll be the best volunteer Harrison Waltz has Cam ever seen.
U.S. President Joe Biden addressing the Democratic National Convention last night in Chicago. Tonight, former President Barack Obama is scheduled to be the keynote speaker, and Kamala Harris officially addresses the party on Thursday. And as I started by saying this morning, I stayed up late to watch some of this. No Beyonce sightings yet. That's something people are waiting and watching for. 8:24 a.m., you're on CBC.
Female athletes have always needed grit and talent. But for decades, they've also needed a certificate
to prove that they were actually women, according to different definitions.
And even now, they're still being checked and questioned. Their story is the newest podcast series from CBC and NPR's Embedded. It's called Tested.
Tested, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC Music Top 20. CBC Music Live.
All right.
Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. Experience the next wave of Indigenous music with Reclaim. The global sounds of frequencies. End your day or start your late night with music on CBC Radio 1. Weeknights at 11, 11:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
8:25 a.m. How you doing out there on this Tuesday morning? It's going to be sticky and hot today. The commute is cooperating. A couple little spots that have issues. So Maryland between Ellis and St. Matthews, there was an issue there. We're not sure if it's cleared yet. And also just want to mention Wilkes to West Taylor on Shaftesbury Boulevard. That still remains closed for the week. And Edmonton between Graham and Portage is also closed today. So just kind of pesky little spots. Note that if you're on your morning commute. But if you want to update anything on the drive, or if you're walking or taking your bike this morning in the city or out on the highway, we'd pass along your tips if you've got them. 788-3093, 788-3093. Lori Hoekstraten is in at 8:26 a.m. Lori's going to be hosting noon today, and that means there's a call-in conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what's the topic for the call-in today?
Well, starting today, mortgage brokers can offer 30-year amortization periods for homeowners. So this is all about maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe you shouldn't buy a house. But we want to know whether the lower interest rates and new rules are actually getting people into new homes. So our guest is mortgage broker Ilan Weintraub. And so we'll have them on for that back half hour of Radio Noon. And we want people to call in and tell us, is this going to affect your life at all? Is this something you want to do? I'm personally glad I'm not in this game at the moment.
I know. Yeah,
difficult.
Being on the other side. It's very difficult. And I think that it's looking at those options and walking through it. What's great about the guest is, though, if you want to call and if you're willing to be open, he can probably answer some questions for you.
You can get some good free advice today.
Yeah.
So give us a call in the afternoon, after 12:35 at 204-780-0893.
Do you have any of those Manitoba regrets that you hear from people in terms of why didn't I buy that house when it was $30,000?
You do hear that, right?
Yeah.
Or people, I sold my house when it was, $50,000.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if you, I was hearing earlier on your show about the new digs for the consul in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about a $9 million penthouse or digs, but then it turned out that the place they're dumping, they've had since 1960, and it's now worth 13, they're saying. So, I guess these things go on in Manitoba, and they go on in the Bright Lights big city for the Canadian consul, too.
If you are looking for a home, or as Lori said, if you're interested in understanding, how these new mortgage rules and rates potentially are going to be affecting you down the line, or if you have questions, please join for the call-in. So people can leave the message right now, or they can call in live between 12:30 and 1, right?
Yes, that's right. And do I have the number for the message? I do not.
788-3797.
Oh, thanks very much, Marcy.
See you later.
Thanks, bye.
Lori Hook-Stratton is filling in for Janet today on Radio Noon. So 12:30 to 1 is that live call-in. If you want to leave a message right now, though, if you are busy over the lunch hour, maybe you're traveling, maybe you've got a summer day off, you're going to be out and about, 204-788-3797 is the number to call. Well, just a reminder as well that The Current is coming up here on CBC Radio, which follows our show. And today, guest host Connie Walker checks in with the mayor of Jasper as residents return home weeks after fleeing wildfires that ripped through town. The community is taking in right now the scale of the destruction as people return and see on the ground what's happening. So, and all the challenges that are going to lie ahead. So that's on The Current this morning, following our program at 8:37 this morning. When we were up in Clear Lake, actually, we did a feature on the theater there, which is an old historic log cabin theater, dates back to the late 30s, I believe. And I was talking to the owner of the theater now. It's family owned. And he's worked in tourism across the country for many years. And I was asking him, I couldn't help noticing sort of the similarities between the vibe at Clear Lake and also the age of this business, and thinking about the businesses and hotels in Jasper and how, they're of similar age and both in national parks. And I wondered whether or not he reached out to anyone. And he was sharing with me that he has had some people he works with in Jasper for a very long time, and he called one of them immediately after the fires ripped through to find out what they knew. And he said, how are you doing? What does your place look like, your business? And the person said, I'm standing on a concrete pad, and that's all that's left. So serious devastation in Jasper. What is the way forward? That is coming up on The Current this morning right here on CBC. So do stay tuned after our show. Also, a reminder of the other local programming through the day. So from noon to 1, of course, Lori was just in, reminding us of Radio Noon here out of Manitoba. And then from 3 to 6 this afternoon to get you home up to speed this afternoon with guest host Emily Brass, who was also in yesterday for Faith this week. So between 3 and 6 o'clock, more Manitoba programming. Well, speaking of all things local, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we have smoky skies and 19 downtown. Hot and humid today with a gusty south wind and a high of 30. Flooding has forced hundreds of tenants to evacuate a downtown Winnipeg apartment high-rise. Fire crews were called to 170 Hargrave Street shortly before noon yesterday. They found a significant flood inside the 25-story building. Richard Marcoux says he was in his suite on the 15th floor when the alarm went off.
They said everyone needs to evacuate the building. So about 11:30, I left the building, and I haven't been able to get back in except to pick up some meds.
Fire crews have been working with police to evacuate and secure the building, which includes shutting off the power. A city spokesperson says about 300 tenants have registered with its emergency social services team. 170 Hargrave is one of the 2 high-rises in the Holiday Towers complex. The company that manages the complex did not respond to CBC's request for comment last night. Business owners in the Pacific Industrial Area near Notre Dame and McPhillips are exasperated by a recent spike in property crime. Jesse one of Manitoba's most prominent First Nations leaders, calls the appointment of this province's newest senator insulting. Kathy Merrick is the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. She's urging the Governor-General to rescind Charles Adler's appointment to the Senate. Adler worked in broadcasting for decades. Merrick says the comments Adler made on the air 25 years ago, including calling First Nations leaders uncivilized boneheads, are offensive.
It's a great insult to First Nation people and a blatant disregard for the principle of respect, of equality, and reconciliation that Canada claims to uphold.
Adler declined to comment on the matter. A Canadian Broadcast Standards Council investigation determined Adler's statements to be fair political comment. Statistics Canada says the annual inflation rate fell to 2.5% last month, down from 2.7% in June. The federal agency says lower prices for travel tours, passenger vehicles, and electricity helped drive the headline figure down. Shelter costs continue to be the main driver of inflation. In Manitoba, the inflation rate came in at 1.8%. July also marked the slowest annual increase since March of 2021. With this news, forecasters are widely fully expecting the Bank of Canada to continue cutting interest rates. That announcement is expected on September the 4th. The Democratic Party convention kicked off in Chicago last night. Kamala Harris is the party's candidate to run for president of the United States, and she made a surprise appearance on the stage during the first night. Former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also spoke at the convention, and she attacked the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump.
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history, the first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions.
Clinton lost to Trump in 2016's U.S. election. U.S. President Joe Biden was the keynote speaker last night. He also criticized Trump. The Democratic Party convention runs until Thursday night. Leaders with CUPE are recommending a new deal for its healthcare support workers in Manitoba. Voting starts today on a new tentative agreement for those workers, which includes healthcare aides and home care attendants. But a petition opposing the contract has been signed by hundreds of people. They say the new deal doesn't do enough to increase the lowest wages in healthcare. Shannon McAteer is the healthcare coordinator with CUPE Manitoba. She says CUPE's leadership is still endorsing the deal, but the final decision is not up to them.
We're recommending it because, one, we do believe it's a fair deal, right? Like, it's a fair deal. Nothing is ever perfect, but we want the members to make that decision.
McAteer says the deal is the best financial package they've secured in a negotiation in many years. And the Winnipeg Humane Society says it's ready to start adopting out dogs from the latest large seizure by the province. 137 small breed dogs were seized by animal welfare officials from a home north of Winnipeg August 1st. And now there are 3 that are available to be snapped up by anyone who wants them. And that is the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You could get your buddy a little buddy.
Oh my goodness. They're so little and mine is so big.
Yeah, he could ride on his back.
Basically.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan.
You bet.
All right, let's have a last look at weather and traffic with Chloe Friesen.
Hello, good morning. Winnipeg right now, smoky skies, 19 degrees at the Forks. We're looking at a mix of sun and cloud today with that hazy sky. Wind becoming south 20, gusting to 40 early this afternoon. Our forecasted high is 30 degrees, but with the humidex going to feel like 35. When it comes to the commute, there's just a few trouble spots that we've been looking at. Edmonton Street between Graham and Portage is closed today until 8 p.m. So it's just for today, but it could maybe disrupt your commute a little bit. Okay. Shaftesbury Boulevard from Wilkes to West Taylor, all northbound and southbound lanes are closed until August 24th. That's for rail crossing work. So if Shaftesbury is part of your daily commute, you're going to want to find an alternate route. And lastly, Maryland between Ellis and St. Matthews. Earlier, there were emergency crews in the right-hand lanes. Could still be there. You can get around to pass.
All right. Thank you, Chloe Friesen, Sierra Sanders, Brad Lillies, as well as Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo, our live team this morning. Big thanks to the associate producers in our current affairs unit and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. My name is Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well. The Current's next.